The candle flame on Stannis Baratheon's map table shivered as dawn crept through the shuttered windows of Storm's End. Every contour of the realm, rivers threaded like veins, mountains crushed into ridges, lay between him and the Iron Throne. Yet for the first time in memory, the lines of his jaw had eased. He had spent a sleepless night pacing the round keep's battlements, chewing on one bitter truth: he could not seize a crown alone. Renly, frivolous Renly with his bright banners and brighter smiles, commanded 50,000 swords that marched beneath the golden rows of Highgarden. Behind those swords stood the Reach's bursting granaries and gilded coffers. Even a man of iron would snap before numbers that vast. It was Davos Seaworth who found him in the violet hush preceding dawn. The Onion Knight bowed, shadows scooping hollows beneath his cheekbones. "Your Grace," he said, quiet as surf over shingle. "Sir Courtney Penrose reports that Renly's envoys wait below. If you mean to see them rebuffed, say so now, and I'll have the drawbridge raised." Stannis rested his gauntleted hands on the merlons. The sea was a sheet of hammered silver. "No," he said at last. The word tasted of salt and sacrifice. "Summon them, and send Maester Pylos to fetch parchment and quills enough to drown a septon." When Renly's lords entered the great hall, they expected another refusal, perhaps another futile attempt to bully Renly's claim into ash. Yet Stannis received them not in armor, but in a plain black surcoat, stitched only with the fiery heart of the Red God. Melisandre stood behind him, scarlet silk pooling at her feet, but her lips were sealed. No smoke curled from the braziers, no shadow stirred beyond torchlight. Lord Mathis Rowan of Golden Grove, head bowed in formal greeting, spoke first. "His Grace Lord Renly Baratheon sends his love and a proposal of everlasting accord." "And I send him answer," Stannis said. "Tell Renly that the seven themselves could not bend me, yet here I bend. I will accept him, accept his counsel, his levies, even his jests, if he will bend his knee in turn." Gasps fluttered like sparrows. Sir Loras Tyrell stepped forward, hand on sword hilt. "Renly is the rightful king by consent of the realm. If you—" "I have no stomach for squabbling over neglected oaths," Stannis interrupted. "We share one blood, one house, and one enemy rotting atop the throne. Joffrey Baratheon is no more my brother's get than he is yours. So meet me halfway. Renly may retain his titles as Lord of Storm's End, Lord Paramount of the Stormlands, and I, Lord Protector of the South. He shall command half our host, sit beside me in council, and rule with me once the usurper is cast down." Rowan's eyes widened. Two kings upon one throne? No. Stannis Sayre could sour wine. One king, tempered by one brother who knows charm where I know duty. If Renly swears fealty this day, I will proclaim him my hand and name the Reach our shield. Silence rang. Then Sir Loras, whose rosebud beauty rarely cracked, betrayed a cautious smile. "I will bear these words to him, your Grace. Bear this, too." Stannis slid a scroll across the table. Hot wax glistened red beneath his signet. "An alliance bound by parchment is thin. Let us bind it in steel and flesh. I have daughters. Renly has none. His children shall sit the throne after mine, or mine after his, whichever bloodline the gods bless first. House Baratheon united can never be broken." Now, when they withdrew, Davos lingered. "You give much away, my king." "I give nothing I can't reclaim if Renly proves faithless." Stannis' mouth twisted. "But he will not. He loves the songs of heroes. I offer him one. And Melisandre." Davos eyed the Red Woman, silent as a carved idol. "She has seen this path in her flames. The Lord's light burned away my pride last night." Stannis gripped Davos' shoulder. "Pray it burned away Renly's as well." 3 nights later, the war camp of the Reach lay sprawled across the Kingswood like an embroidered carpet. Silken pavilions, pennons flapping, cooking fires dotting the dark. Within the largest tent, Renly Baratheon lounged upon a cushioned seat, his crowned stag helm discarded beside a flagon. When his envoys returned, breathless, he spilled dark arbor red across the map in his haste to rise. He said what? Rowan relayed every word. Renly paced, one hand tugging at the green velvet of his sleeves. At last he halted before his queen, Margaery Tyrell, whose eyes glittered with calculative calm. "What say you, my lady?" Margaery's voice was a spring breeze. "He spares your life, your honors, and offers our children the realm. In exchange he asks but a knee, bend it, then rise higher than any could have dreamed." Sir Loras set his jaw. "Brother, you need not submit. With the Tyrell levies we can take King's Landing without Stannis, and sit upon a throne stained in my brother's blood." Renly sighed. "I love him still, Loras, and love the realm more. What songs will minstrels sing of two Baratheon brothers sundered by vanity?" He knelt then, swift as a knight before his liege, but faced Margaery. "Will you forgive a man who sets aside pride?" She brushed his cheek. "I forgive nothing. There is nothing to forgive. Only a kingdom to win." Lightning sundered the sky above Bitterbridge, carving white scars upon cloud. Beneath that cracked firmament, two hosts drew together like drawn blades. Yet instead of blood, the ground drank only rain, for Renly rode forward with a white banner, Stannis with a black. They dismounted, boots squelching in mud, and advanced alone. Renly laughed, rain streaming from his hair. "Brothers meet, and the heavens themselves weep joy. You always talk too much." But Stannis clasped him in a sudden embrace, gauntlets clanging against gilded mail. A roar went up from both armies. "Baratheon, Baratheon, Baratheon, Baratheon." That night feasting fires licked the dark. Ale and wine flowed. Stormlander clasped Reachman. Knight clasped Squire. The Red Woman watched flames dance in her cupped palms, seeing visions none else could glimpse. Somewhere in the melee of mirth, Renly bent the knee before the ruby glow. Stannis drew him up, kissed his brow, and proclaimed him Hand of the King. Thus House Baratheon stood whole at last. The march on King's Landing began beneath banners wet with dawn mist. 50,000 foot, 15,000 horse, and the fleets of Storm's End and Driftmark crowded Blackwater Bay within a fortnight, cutting off every river and coastal approach. Across the crenellations of King's Landing, Joffrey Baratheon's lions watched with trembling paws. Inside the Red Keep, Cersei paced like a caged lioness. Where is Robb Stark? Where's Balon Greyjoy? Where is any enemy who might pull these usurpers homeward? Tyrion Lannister shrugged, sipping watered wine. Rumors say the young wolf crosses the Trident even now. But he will not reach the city in time. Father rides from Harrenhal but needs weeks. Stannis and Renly need only days. Joff will not yield, Cersei hissed. He needn't. I have wildfire. Tyrion produced a parchment laden with green, spidery script. Enough jars to boil the black water and torch every ship afloat. Cersei's eyes sparked. Do it. Turn the river into an emerald grave. Tyrion bowed, yet his mind churned. The wildfire stores were vast but volatile, and Renly's knights were friends of a sort. Kill them, and every Reachman would howl for Lannister blood until the sun turned black. Still, orders were orders. He fetched Halin the pyromancer. Outside the city, Renly strode the siege lines with Loras and Brienne of Tarth in tow. Ziga towers bristled like monstrous insects half-built, trebuchets groaned and creaked, and black iron pots full of pitch simmered. Yet Renly's brow was knit. If they surrender before blood is spilled, the realm heals sooner. Cersei will never surrender, Brienne said, blue eyes fierce. She would see the city burn rather than bend. Renly's mouth turned grim. Then we must storm before she can think to torch it. He quickened his step toward Stannis' pavilion. Within, maps were strewn like discarded skins. Stannis looked up. Scouts report Lannister ships massing wildfire at the mouth of the Blackwater. Renly slammed both palms onto the table. Give me the vanguard. I'll break their gates by dawn. Wildfire doesn't care whose colors you bear, Stannis warned. Loras and I know the causeways. We'll cut through Flea Bottom and seize the gatehouse. Once the portcullis is up, your men can flood in. Melisandre's shadow fell between them. Night is dark and full of terrors. Yet in darkness, The Lord of Light grants victory. Let the green fire come. The flames will be his gift." Stannis' eyes flicked with doubt, but he nodded. First light then. The green fire came sooner. Under a moonless sky, the black water lit with emerald dragons. Fire gushed from siege towers, from barge to barge. Men's screams warped into crackling shrieks. Tyrion Lannister's chain, half forged in secret, slammed up between burning hulks, trapping Baratheon ships in a lake of living jade. Renly, atop his white charger, watched in horror as the Ardent Maiden, flagship of Brightwater Keep, split apart like a seed pod, spraying wildfire across 3 nearby galleys. Loras sound retreat, his voice drowned beneath roaring flame. Brienne dragged him from the parapet as a tongue of green reached for them. Meanwhile, Stannis' ground assault pressed on. Ziga ladders clattered against the gate of the gods, pennons of the crowned stag tangled with lion banners in crimson slaughter. Ser Davos, dismounted, carved a path through gold cloaks, while shouting for men to fall back from the burning shore. But wind carried sparks deeper into the city. Within Maegor's holdfast, Cersei held Tommen tight. "If the walls fall, we drink poison." Joffrey, pale and furious, stamped. "I am king. I will fight." "You will hide," Tyrion snapped, shoving the boy toward the tunnels. "There's still time. Father's vanguard may appear by daybreak." Yet dawn's light revealed not Lord Tywin but a monstrous ram battering King's Gate, driven by Baratheon hands. The walls, weakened by wildfire detonations undermining their foundations, cracked like eggs. Renly and Loras led the first charge through. Their rainbow guard clashed with gold cloaks, gutters ran red. Brienne shouldered aside 6 sellswords, the blue cloak of her house torn and smeared. In her wake thundered hundreds of mounted knights, green and gold. Inside the great sept of Baelor, citizens huddled praying. Melisandre walked among them untouched, red robes swirling. "Look upon the true king's justice." She whispered, and the statues of the 7 seemed to shudder as if alive in the rising heat. By noon, the Red Keep's towers flew the crowned stag. Joffrey Baratheon, the royal blood drained from his face, knelt before Stannis in the throne room, golden circlet askew. Cersei stood beside him in chains of silver. Opal bruise blooming on her cheek. Tyrion, bloodied yet alive, had negotiated the terms. Life for the Lannisters in exchange for swift surrender. Renly watched his elder brother ascend cold marble steps to the Iron Throne. The hall was thick with soot and the stench of burning fat. Stannis turned. In the silence, the clang of every mailed knee echoed. "Lords and ladies," he said, voice raw but unbroken, "the realm has bled for falsehoods. No longer. I stand not alone. My brother Renly, trueborn of Storm's End, takes my right hand." He beckoned, and Renly walked, warmth in his stride, to kneel at Stannis' side. Stannis unsheathed Lightbringer, its edge rippling with unnatural heat, and laid it upon Renly's shoulders. "Arise, Lord Renly Baratheon, hand of the king." Renly rose smiling, and for a heartbeat hope shimmered above the ashes. Yet peace is a seed sown in rocky soil. That evening, as Stannis held council in the Tower of the Hand, its chambers hastily aired yet still pungent with Lannister perfumes, discord sprouted. Lord Randyll Tarly demanded harsh penalties upon any house that had sided with Joffrey, their heads or their heirs as hostages. Lord Bryce Caron countered, "Win the hearts of small folk by mercy." Renly, seated beside Stannis, pressed palms together. "Our first act should be to ease famine. The wildfire destroyed much of Fleabottom's granaries. Margaery advises sending Reach grain at once." Stannis grunted. "A king who cannot feed his subjects has no subjects." He approved the measure, and ravens flew that night. But others eyed the crown hungrily. In River Run, Robb Stark received word of King's Landing's fall and pondered. Should he march south to bend the knee, or hold his title as king in the north? The Karstark lords, still thirsting for Lannister blood, swore they would never accept southern rule. In Old Town, the High Septon denounced Melisandre's heathen sorcery, claiming fires in the city proved the wrath of the Seven. Peaches rotted on the docks as quarrels over heresy stoked riots. And in Casterly Rock, Lord Tywin Lannister, surviving sons Jaime prisoner, Tyrion hostage, received news with a face like granite. He ordered new levies from the Westerlands and summoned the Iron Bank of Bravostad. Baratheon sit the throne? Then we will topple it, stone by bloody stone parting thee. Winterfell's godswood rustled with hidden birds as Robb Stark knelt before the heart tree. Catelyn watched her son's shoulders hunched beneath mail. King Stannis offers amnesty Robb. He demands only we acknowledge his crown. Robb's gray eyes mirrored the pool. And Theon Greyjoy raids our coasts. I must choose which war to fight. He stood. Stannis slew the Lannisters we named foe. Yet who rules beside him? A red priestess who burns gods and men, and a reach lordling who once mocked our father. I will speak with them, but I will not yield the north lightly. Catelyn clasped his hand. Then go to King's Landing. Parley, while we clear the krakens from our shore. Words before swords, Ned always said. Nine. Robb nodded. I leave at first thaw. In the capital, Renly found ruling a colder art than tournaments. While he toured the shattered streets distributing bread, Stannis held rigid sessions of justice. Cersei and Joffrey were confined to Maegor's Holdfast. Tyrion joined them, though he served as reluctant advisor. Jaime arrived in chains soon after, delivered by Brienne of Tarth, who had captured him on the Gold Road. Stannis debated whether to execute the Kingslayer, his hand at the throat of the realm's best swordsman. Yet counsel split. Harshness would stir Westerland rebellions. Mercy might seem weakness. Meanwhile, Melisandre spoke each night of darker foes. Your grace has crushed the lion, but a wolf with 3 heads slumbers still. Her ruby pulsed. In Dragonstone's vaults I saw it, a kraken in league with a flayed man and wings shadowing the east. Stannis dismissed her riddles, but unease gnawed his sleep. Renly, restless, to walk the Red Keep's corridors at night. One such evening he discovered Sansa Stark, pale and frightened, wandering alone. Lord Renly. She curtsied, trembling. My betrothed is gone, but I am still a hostage. Renly knelt, level with her tear-glossed eyes. No. Sweet girl, you are guest of the king. Tomorrow you shall dine with Lady Margaery and myself. Sansa looked near tears of relief. Thank you, my lord. When she had gone, Renly felt a chill. So many innocents tangled in the game for thrones. His brother's rigid justice might not be gentle enough to mend them. He resolved to be their balm. Autumn winds rolled crisp through King's Landing when the Stark envoy arrived. Robb Stark in plain gray, flanked by the Blackfish and Great John Umber. The camps beyond the walls filled with shaggy northern horse. Stannis greeted them in the throne room, Lightbringer across his knees. Renly stood beside him in green and gold. Robb knelt. Your Grace, I come to honor your victory and petition for redress. My sisters were held captive, my bannermen slain under false crowns. Justice will be served, Stannis intoned. The Kingslayer's fate may ease northern grief. Robb's gaze flicked to Jaime in chains. One life cannot repay a war. What would you have? Renly asked. Autonomy, Robb replied. The North has bled too much for southern wars. Grant it self-rule beneath your overlordship. No tribute but men in time of invasion. In return I pledge swords against any Lannister rebellion. Stannis' lips thinned. Bannermen are owed fealty. I will not shatter the realm into petty kingdoms. So it was shattered already, Robb countered. When Robert died and you two vied for crowns, I asked not to be king, only to guard my people's way of life. Mender. Renly stepped forward. Brother, the North is vast and harsh. What harm in granting them right to govern themselves, so long as they march beneath our banners in need? He met Stannis' stare, unblinking. Mercy wins hearts where fear wins only silence. Stannis looked to Davos, then Melisandre. The Red Woman said nothing. The Onion Knight inclined his head slightly. Stannis exhaled. Very well. The North shall have its Lord Paramount, king in all but crowned. But its ports remain open to royal levy, and its mines pay coin in times of war. Now, Robb's shoulders eased. He rose. You are gracious, your grace. That night, the High Lords feasted beneath chandeliers newly forged. Sansa Stark sat between Margaery and Robb, laughing for the first time since Eddard's fall. Yet above, a raven flapped unseen through black skies toward Casterly Rock. Tywin Lannister moved like a golden shadow across the floors of his war room. Stannis has captured our children. The Baratheons hold our gold at pawn. They starve our trade with seizing Blackwater Bay. Kevin cleared his throat. We have mines. We can fund Sellswords. No. Tywin's fist slammed down. I will not buy Sellswords to rescue my blood. We take back by right what is ours. He spread new parchments, schematics of Carthian trebuchets, contracts from Volantine admirals, letters from Dorne hinting at old Martell grudges. We raise new alliances. We knit a web, then we pull. Outside his window, the sunset was crimson. In its glare, Tywin's hair looked aflame. In the shadow of Dragonstone's forge aisle, Melisandre knelt before her painted table of Westeros, candles flickering like hearth fires. She whispered to flames, and flames whispered back. A dragon stirred across the map, tail coiling through the narrow sea, wings unfurling in Valeria's smoking hinterlands. The dream had grown vivid of late. 3 heads, 3 riders, 1 song of fire. She feared its harmony. Stannis entered quietly. You see enemies. Shadows. She answered. But some are born of light. Trust in your fire, my king. Stannis lifted Lightbringer. Its blade glowed softly. Fire burns friend and foe alike. He turned away, cloak fluttering. If I must burn half this realm to save the other, so be it. Yet I wonder if another path remains. Melisandre's ruby throbbed, but she said only, There is always sacrifice. Renly found himself increasingly championing that other path. He established soup kitchens across Flea Bottom, funded by Reach coffers, commissioned singers to craft new ballads praising unity, and invited the small folk to tournaments where they could feast on leftover venison, while knights tilted. Stannis tolerated these extravagances as necessary to maintain order, yet tensions simmered. The king's treasury, drained by war, could ill afford pageantry. One stormy council meeting, Renly proposed remitting half King's Landing's taxes for a year. Merchants will return if burdens lessen. Prosperity fills coffers faster than levies. Stannis' fist clenched. Prosperity requires order. Order requires coin. We still rebuild walls, purchase grain, bribe SOC sell sales against Lannister raids. Borrow from the Iron Bank then, Renly urged. They chase profit, not loyalty. Davos interjected. Borrow dragons hatch sharp debts. Renly spread his hands. Then accept mine. The Tyrells are flush with gold. And hold our purse strings thereafter, Stannis snapped. Melisandre stepped between them, voice velvet. Discord serves the great other. Remember your shared purpose. The brothers fell silent, yet the wedge had sunk deeper. Winter came early to the Westerlands. Snow dusted the golden fields as Tywin Lannister marched beneath red and gold. He bypassed the Golden Tooth, avoiding pitched battle, and split his host. One column east to raid the Reach, another north to harry the Riverlands, severing grain supplies. A third sailed up the Mander on black-hulled vessels bought from Bravos, landing crack sellsword companies behind Baratheon lines. Bandits in lion cloaks torched villages loyal to Storm's End, sowing fear of the false king's protection. Reports flooded King's Landing. Stannis ordered musters, but the garrison was thin. Half the army still spread across the realm guarding tenuous peace. Renly pressed to ride west himself with the Knights of the Reach. Stannis demanded he stay and govern. Heated words flared. I am not some puppet lord to sit safe while my people burn. Your duty is here with your king. That night, Renly saddled his charger, Rainbow Guard at his side, and rode out the river gate under moonlight. Brienne alone guessed his intent but could not sway him. Dawn found him galloping up the Roserad, banners streaming. When Stannis learned his brother had departed without leave, his anger was volcanic. Yet Melisandre whispered, "Let him ride. In battle, his light may blaze or perish, and the Lord will reveal which flame burns truest." "Benanti." Stannis glared but said nothing. The armies collided in the fields outside Ashford. Renly's vanguard, 20,000 mounted knights, slammed into sellswards from Volantis and Myr. The summer sun beat down, flashing off polished breastplates. At first Renly's charge shattered the mercenary pikes. Riders broke through to carve bloody swaths. Renly laughed beneath his antlered helm, green cloak billowing. Then the Golden Company emerged from hidden woods, elephants trumpeting, phalanxes bristling. They had sailed from Tyrosh under Lannister coin. Renly's center faltered. Into the gap rode Ser Loras, battering ram of roses, Ser Robar Royce beside him. The clash was titanic. Evening found fields strewn with dead men and trampled blossoms. Renly fought like a whirlwind, but numbers pressed him back. At dusk, a Myrish crossbow bolt pierced his horse. He tumbled, helmet cracking. Ser Loras leapt to shield him as pikes closed. Renly tried to rise. Pain lanced his leg. Lions roared in every direction. Suddenly the sound of drums thundered. Stormlander war drums. Stannis' relief host, having marched day and night, burst over a hilltop. Davos led the first ranks, standard of the crowned stag rippling. They crashed into the flank of the Golden Company, smashing the phalanx. Tywin Lannister assessed from a ridge and ordered retreat before the trap snapped shut. His sellswards disengaged in disciplined columns, leaving Renly's beleaguered knights breathing ragged thanks. Stannis dismounted beside his brother. Renly, blood streaking his cheek, managed a grin. "Came to steal my glory?" Stannis hauled him upright. "Came to save your fool hide." For a heartbeat, affection softened his iron. But as healers bore Renly away, Stannis turned to survey the ruin, the heaps of men, the elephant corpses, the stench, and something inside him calcified. Mercy had cost too dear. They pursued Tywin across the Mander, yet every mile bled supply lines. Winter torrents swelled rivers, wagons mired in mud. Peasants, terrorized by raiders wearing lion cloaks, fled their homes and clogged roads. Stannis' army sagged beneath hunger. Melisandre's red priests urged burning the harvest fields to deny them to Tywin. Davos countered that flames would starve the small folk. In the storm of debate, Renly's injuries festered. Maester Pylos lanced the wound, but fever climbed. Margaery rode day and night to reach him, arriving at Bitterbridge to hold his sweat-slick hand. She sang softly of Highgarden's fountains. Renly's breaths rattled. At Stannis' command tent, word arrived that Euron Greyjoy had raided the Arbor and now sought alliance with Tywin. "The realm cracks," Davos warned. "We must seal one fissure before chasing the next." Stannis studied the war map. Lions gnawed the west, krakens the south, uncertain dragons the east. "Pull back to King's Landing," he ordered. "Regroup, fortify, strike in spring." Renly, fevered, begged him to stay and defend the Reach. But Stannis would not. Better to lose flower petals than roots. The throne is the trunk. If it falls, all else rots. So they marched home, leaving Mace Tyrell to guard his own. The Tyrell lord bore it ill, muttering that Baratheon promises wilted quicker than daisies. When Renly's litter passed, unconscious, Tyrell eyes turned baleful. Back in the capital, Renly lingered between worlds. Stannis visited nightly, guilt hiding behind stern features. One eve Melisandre entered unbidden. "King's blood flows strong in him. A sacrifice may scour your path of enemies." Stannis recoiled. "He is my flesh. Yet the Lord of Light asks only for what is already his." She murmured. Her ruby gleamed scarlet. Stannis drew Lightbringer, burning white-hot. "No more talk of shadows." Melisandre bowed, but her gaze burned. "Then pray his flame endures, for without it darkness closes." A raven alighted on the capital's rookery one bleak dawn. A letter bearing the red sun of Dorne. Prince Doran Martell offered 90 spears for every Lannister slain, in exchange for justice for Elia and her children. Stannis considered. Align with Dorne and encircle Casterly Rock, or trust to present allies already fraying. He dispatched Davos south to treat. Promise reparations, marriages. Promise them vengeance enough to quench 20 years of thirst. While Davos sailed, Tywin struck again. Lannister agents infiltrated the city, bribing discontented gold cloaks. One crisp night, a riot burst along the Street of Flower, sparked by rumors that Renly's physicians bled him with leeches of demon blood. Fires leapt building to building. Tyrion, still captive but freer than most, organized bucket lines to douse flames, saving half the market district. In gratitude, Stannis relaxed his chains. In private, Tyrion mused that saving cities was a thankless occupation. Stannis doubled patrols, but paranoia seeped through court. Whispers accused Margaery of plotting to place a Tyrell heir on the throne should Renly die. Whispers claimed Melisandre had brewed poisons to finish what Steel had failed. Whispers gnawed. Renly awoke at last in a chamber, scented with roses. Margaery dozed by his side. Sunlight slanted through lattice, warming his chill skin. He blinked. Pain still throbbed, but life clung. "How long?" he rasped. "4 moons." Margaery's smile trembled. "The realm is restless." Renly struggled upright. He must steady that realm again. He read reports. Reach harvests scorched by war. Northern lords grumbling about southern taxes renewed to fund more campaigns. Ironborn raiding untouched shores. He summoned Stannis. The brothers met in the Tower of the Hand. Renly spoke softly. "We need peace, or we will lose by our own weight. Offer Tywin truce. Offer Robb Stark firm borders. Send ships to deter the Kraken." Stannis' mouth tightened to a white line. "Tywin will never make terms while he lacks his children. He will keep striking until we break or he bleeds dry. Well, he bleeds faster than we, but our buckets are emptier," Renly warned. "Release Jaime. Trade him for Westerland hostages, coin, grain. Then Tywin cannot starve King's Landing." Stannis' gaze hardened. "The Kingslayer murdered our brother." Renly met that gaze. "And you will murder the realm if you clutch old wounds forever. Justice without mercy rots into vengeance." Silence bloomed between them. At last, Stannis turned away. "I will consider." When Davos returned from Sunspear with word that Dorne would march, if promised the Mountain's Head, and a Targaryen bride, council erupted anew. Margaery urged acceptance. "Give them Gregor Clegane, and promise little Aegon if he yet lives," while others balked at fueling Targaryen pretensions. Melisandre merely smiled, seeing in the flames a silver-haired queen walking among ashes. Stannis weighed alliances like iron ingots. One night, he visited Jaime in the black cells. Torchlight cast bars across the Kingslayer's face. "Will your father make peace for you?" Stannis asked. Jaime lounged against the wall. "My father would burn the world to ash to save me, but he would burn me as quick to save the world. Peace, he obeys only victory." Stannis nodded once. "Then may the flames judge us both." He ordered Jaime transferred to a tower, better fed, treated as bargaining chip. Yet on the eve of his relocation, a hooded jailer slit his throat. The assassin vanished into tunnels. Panic seized the court. Without Jaime, Tywin had nothing to lose. War would come anew. Winter's first true snow drifted over King's Landing when Renly sought Stannis in the Godswood Garden. Melisandre had turned to ash months prior. Black branches jutted like ribs against a steel sky. "Enough," Renly implored. "Send me to treat with Tywin. I will kneel again if I must." Stannis' eyes were embers. "You kneel too easily. I bent once. It cost blood and gold. Tywin smells weakness." "Then march," Renly snapped. "But no, I will ride at the front, and if your stubborn justice kills me, the realm will drown in roses and rage." He strode away, cloak swirling green over snow. Stannis watched him go. Davos approached. "Renly speaks true, sire. Hard steel shatters, tempered bends." Stannis' voice was soft. "I tempered once. Perhaps I must temper again." They forged a daring plan. Renly would ride under peace banner with Davos, and a small escort to negotiate at the ruins of Tumbleton, midway between lines. Stannis remained in King's Landing, hostage to his own word that no army would move until parley ended. Melisandre protested. The flames showed betrayal. But Stannis silenced her. On a gray dawn, Renly set out. Snow hushed the world. Halfway to Tumbleton, they spied lion banners ahead. Tywin awaited in gilded armor, face unreadable. Between the two columns, a field had been cleared. Renly dismounted, approached alone. Tywin did likewise, cloak snapping scarlet. They met within earshot of hidden archers. Renly spoke first. "Lord Tywin, we need not drown Westeros in further blood. Name your price: gold, grain, Casterly Rock's autonomy. I will plead it to my brother." Tywin's green eyes glittered. "My price sits the Iron Throne. My price bears a crowned lion. That can never be. Then neither can peace." Tywin turned. Horns sounded. Crossbows twanged. Arrows whistled. Renly staggered as a quarrel punched through mail into his chest. Davos shouted. Baratheon outriders charged. Lannister riders countercharged. The parley dissolved into chaos. Renly clutched the shaft, coughing blood. He fell to one knee. Loras screamed and spurred forward, but Tywin's guards hemmed him back. Davos hauled Renly across a horse and fled south. News reached King's Landing on wings of sorrow. Renly Baratheon died at Bitterbridge 2 nights later, lungs drowned in blood. Margaery weeping by his side. When Stannis received the raven, he wept too. A single tear seared down a face carved of rock. Then he sharpened Lightbringer until sparks flew. At dawn he strode to the Redkeep steps. "My brother is slain by treachery," his voice boomed. "War is upon us until Tywin Lannister's head adorns spear." The city shuddered. Stormlanders howled for vengeance. Reachmen cried for a Rose King avenged. Northern envoys whispered of broken promises. Melisandre lit a great pyre in the square. Stannis cast Renly's antlered helm upon it. Flames roared crimson. "O Lord of Light," Melisandre intoned, "claim this soul, kindle this wrath, and guide your sword." That night, green sparks from wildfire stores, still hidden beneath the city, ignited, turning the sky an eerie jade. Many claimed they saw a stag of living flame leap from the pyre, gallop across the heavens, and plunge toward Casterly Rock. Others said it was only embers on the wind. Yet, hearts burned alike. Thus the realm plunged once more into darkness. Yet within that darkness glimmered shards of Renly's dream. Bakeries reopened, small folk fed by Reach grain, Sansa Stark rescued from torment, a northern autonomy sealed by parchment, awaiting royal seal. A better world flickered in possibility, but winter's gales threatened to snuff the flame. Stannis rode forth with every sword he could muster, Davos at his right and Brienne, sworn now to Renly's memory, at his left. Behind them thundered knights of the Stormlands, sell-sails of Lys, crossbowmen from Pentos whose contracts Davos had bargained. Above them crackled banners. The crowned stag, the fiery heart, and a new sigil, a golden rose entwined with stag antlers on a field of emerald, for Renly's memory and the realm he tried to build. As the host passed the city gates, snowflakes swirled like pale ashes. King's Landing held its breath. Somewhere far across the sea, 3 dragon eggs cracked in a funeral pyre, and the world changed again. K-N-D. Wow. Cold dawn rose over the King's Road, dim and colorless as old bone. A brittle crust of snow had hardened in the night, and every hoofbeat of Stannis Baratheon's column cracked it like thin glass. The wind moaned through the bare limbs of black oaks, and carried banners that snapped like whips, crowned stags on gold, hearts aflame on crimson, and the newest standard, a golden rose twined about antlers on a field of deep green. Fluttering at the van. Some men called it a fair, hopeful sigil. Others whispered it an omen that the past could never truly be buried. Whatever it meant, 43,000 souls marched beneath it, bound together by grief and by hunger for retribution. Davos Seaworth rode beside the king near the front. A dark beard of fresh growth masked the gaunt planes of his face, and sleeplessness lined the corners of his eyes, but he kept his shoulders straight. Beyond the king's helmed profile he could see Brienne of Tarth, her plate newly blued, the rose antler sigil painted across her breast. Grief had hollowed her, yet it had also hardened her. She rode as if she were the lance point of the whole column. Stannis spoke little on the road. When he did, it was in clipped commands. Adjust the pace, send out a scout, tighten the baggage train. On the second morning, he summoned Davos with a rust-rough word, and steered his gelding off the beaten track, descending toward an abandoned shepherd's cot that crouched between two moss-slick boulders. Inside, ragged holes gaped in the thatch. Stannis dismounted, ducked beneath the lintel, and tossed aside a tangle of rotted rushes to clear a space on the earthen floor. His breath smoked in the frigid air. "I dream of his face, Onion Knight," he said without preamble. Renly laughing, as he did when we were boys in Storm's End. Every dream ends with that quarrel ripping through his breast. Davos' throat tightened. "Dreams, your grace, are naught but fancy." Stannis' head whipped up. "I remember my hands slick with Robert's blood as we lifted him to the maester's table. I remember Renly's laughter echoing up the stair behind us. 2 brothers in blood, 1 brother in mirth. Now," his jaw worked, "I have neither." Silence pooled between them, broken only by a distant bray of horns as the vanguard shifted. Davos had no words that would not sound like platitudes. He laid his stump-scarred fingers on the hilt of his sword and waited. Stannis knelt, surprising Davos. "Melisandre prates of sacrifice. She would have me burn Renly's corpse outright, claim some power from king's blood." He scraped grime beneath his nail. "I would sooner burn myself. The Lady Melisandre believes. I know what she believes." Stannis stood again, taller than the slumped rafters could hold. Daylight spilled around him in a ragged halo. "I have no love left for gods, Davos. Only the realm and duty. Tywin Lannister murdered the last light in my life. If I must feed that to Errolor to see Tywin fall, I will. But not before I have tried steel and strategy." Davos bowed his head. "Then steel and strategy it shall be." When they emerged, the sky had darkened like tarnished pewter. 10 black wings circled overhead, ravens or perhaps carrion crows already scenting future corpses. Ahead of them, the road bent east toward Bitterbridge, where the ashes of Renly's pavilion still mingled with churned frozen mud. Scouts returning from the ruins brought word that Tywin had withdrawn into the Westerlands, but he had left the land in chaos. Charred farmsteads, poisoned wells, flayed corpses hung from trees beneath a crimson lion. Every horror was another dagger in the reach, bleeding its will to march at Stannis' side. Lord Mace Tyrell had withdrawn to Highgarden to console his daughter and bury his fury behind walls of green marble. But Stannis needed Tyrell grain if the host were to survive deep winter. So 20 ravens feathered with black wax took flight from the rear of the army, each bearing a sealed letter in Davos' scratch-crooked hand. They promised justice for Renly's death, a plum share of Lannister plunder, and most potent, the Mountain's head delivered to the High Septon for trial, or to Marguerite Tyrell for vengeance, if that were her wish. Davos feared it would not be enough. Mace Tyrell longed to see a Tyrell king, or at least a Tyrell queen. Yet with Renly gone, Stannis' daughter Shireen was the only child left of Baratheon blood, and rumors said the grayscale scars upon her face frightened men worse than wildfire. The Tyrells would not wed a daughter to her. The crown would pass elsewhere first. Still, Davos ravens flew, and hope flew with them. 50 leagues north, Robb Stark's host made its winter camp beyond the dread ruins of Harrenhal. Robb stood outside the twisted iron doors of that blackened keep, cold mist puffing from his nostrils. He had expected to find the castle garrisoned by Lannisters. Instead, he found butchered horses, flayed corpses, and the hall hung with the flayed men of Bolton. Roose Bolton greeted him within the main hall, pale eyes flickering in candlelight. "My king," he said, soft as rustling silk. "I merely scoured the lion's den. The Mountain fled before us." Robb studied the pools of cooled blood, still shining like garnets between the flagstones. You scour too deep, Lord Bolton. If half the tales are true, this slaughter will haunt us all. Bolton inclined his head. A ghost to keep the lions at bay, perhaps. Catelyn Stark arrived days later, bearing news of Renly's death and Stannis' southward march. Robb listened in brooding silence. They knew little of the brothers' alliance beyond the barest rumor, but what they did know chilled them. Stannis would not rest until every Lannister lay beneath his black boot. We still have Sansa in his custody, Catelyn reminded her son as they shared a scant fire. Think, Robb. If Stannis topples Tywin, he holds our sister hostage, and then whose war do we fight? Robb stared into the flames. If Tywin falls, the south reshapes itself. The north may yet stand apart, but not if Bolton's butchery brands us beasts. He called a council that night beneath Harrenhal's melted towers. Bolton defended his ruthless tactics. The Greyjoy roared approval. Edmure Tully, purple-cheeked with horror, begged Robb to rein in brutality. In the end, Robb proclaimed a decree. No more flayings, no more wanton slaughter. Bolton's pale smile never wavered, but a shadow crossed his face like a dark promise. At the heart of the sunset sea, Ironborn longships carved black wakes toward Fair Isle. Euron Crow's eye, in a cloak of raven feathers, watched sea spray fleck his eye patch. News of Renly's death thrilled him. Another weakling drowned. Now he meant to bleed the Reach faster, raiding its coastlines to starve Stannis. With Tywin's coin clinking in his holds, and Balon Greyjoy half senile on pike, Euron grasped for a wider crown, the sea itself, and the chaos of a realm at war. His reavers struck like harpoons. Maidenpool, Seaguard, even as far south as Old Oak. Each port burned another hole in Stannis' larder. When word reached King's Landing, the small folk howled for ships and salt. But Stannis' war galleys were snow-locked in the Blackwater, and the golden galleons of the Arbor would not sail without Tyrell order. Once more the king summoned his council, now thin of familiar faces. Renly's empty chair loomed like a tombstone at the long oaken table. Brienne had taken Renly's rainbow cloak, cut away its 7-colored panels, and sewn them into a single strip of cloth she wore, looped about her sword arm. She stood behind Shireen, who sat wide-eyed, absorbing every word as if they were lessons. Stannis did not sit. Every grain store south of the Mander is threatened. If Tyrell grain does not come, the city starves. Paxter Redwine, newly arrived with a flotilla only half loyal, spread his hands. My ships will not brave Euron's blockade unless Lords Tyrell and Hightower give command. Davos cleared his throat. Your Grace, mayhaps we break the Ironborn first. A swift strike at Fair Isle could. Swift. Stannis' eyes burned beneath his planar brow. Nothing is swift in winter. He jabbed a mailed finger toward a map. Better we draw Euron to us. We fortify every harbor south, set greenfire traps along the coast. Then we bleed him where the sea meets stone. Then see. Tyrion Lannister, still a reluctant advisor, toyed with a quill. That trick cost you half your own fleet on the Blackwater, Your Grace. Euron may be mad, but he's not stupid. He'll smell wildfire a league off. So we sent it with something sweeter, Tyrion went on. Pitch-soaked driftwood disguised as casks of arbor gold. Let the Ironborn haul it aboard. One spark, and the Krakens burn themselves. Stannis considered, eyes half-lidded. At what cost? A few barrels of good wine, Tyrion said with a crooked smile. And a shipment of spies willing to play deckhand. Brienne's head lifted. I will go. No. Stannis' refusal was an anvil. You are my sword, sir. Sailors must play this mummer's farce, not knights. Brienne accepted that with plain stoicism. Shireen, however, leaned forward. Could we not send sell sails from Pentos instead, father? They need coin, and they'll keep quiet if paid. A ripple of surprise passed around the table. It was the first time the princess had spoken in council. Stannis' stern facade cracked into a proud half-smile. You have your mother's cunning. Yes, Pentoshi sell sails may do. Davos allowed himself a private smile. If Shireen were gaining her father's ear, perhaps the iron shell around the king could be pierced. In Highgarden's perfumed corridors, Lady Margaery paced beside her brother's tomb. The marble effigy of Renly lay serene, antlered helm cradled upon his chest. The carver had caught the curve of his smile exactly. But that smile stabbed Margaery like a thorn each time she saw it. She knelt, whispered in the hush. "I will see justice done, my love." Lord Mace Tyrell lumbered in, velvet doublet strained across his belly, and laid a hand on her shoulder. "Stannis begs grain and ships. The Raven claims a captive mountain for us. What think you, daughter?" Margaery rose, smoothing her mourning green. "Send him grain, send ships, and send Sir Garland to King's Landing as our envoy. But hold the bulk of our hosts at Bitterbridge. Stannis must earn our full fealty by avenging Renly. Not with talk. Blood for blood." Macy's eyes gleamed. "And what of wedlock?" "Stannis has one daughter. She could be a match for one of your cousins." "Bah. Too young." Margaery clasped her hands. "I would secure Highgarden's future through another path." She turned to the white marbled effigy again. Renly's dream must not die. Her gaze settled on the stag and rose standard, folded at the foot of the tomb. If the dream needed a champion, she would become one. Winter bit hard. The first storms buried the King's Road beneath drifts higher than a man's waist. Smaller hamlets vanished entirely. In the Red Keep's great hall fires roared day and night, yet their heat never seemed to touch the throne of fused blades. Stannis stood before it on a chill evening as his smiths brought forth the latest toll. 50 new swords hammered from farm tools and melted lion sigils. They would be recast into the throne's twisted mass, a visible testament to Baratheon victory. While sparks flew, Davos approached with fresh tidings. Thoros of Myr's outlaws have been sighted along the Trident. They claim to fight for the small folk, but they raid our grain trains. Stannis scowled. "We have no men to spare for brigands. Perhaps we can turn them," Davos suggested. "Offer pardons." Ser Beric once served House Dondarrion with honor. "Honor's hungry," Stannis muttered, but he waved assent. "Send a raven." As Davos retreated, Melisandre glided from the shadows. Her red silk shimmered like wet blood. "The flames dance restless, your grace. Great darkness swells beyond the wall, worse than kraken or lion. You ride toward one war while another rises unseen." Stannis' patience frayed. "I have no men to send north. Tell your flames to hold their tongues." "They will not. A boy burns upon a pyre of ice. A horn is blown. A dragon stirs beneath frost. And now?" Stannis turned away. "That is a tale for maesters. I fight the wars before me." Yet later, alone in his solar, he studied a tattered map of the wall, and shivered, though the brazier blazed. Tywin Lannister sat in the solar of Riverrun, which he had retaken with terrifying precision. A mute boy poured him wine. Outside, river mists clung to the battlements. Kevan stood at the hearth, reading the latest reports. Stannis withdrew to the capital. Kevan said, "He husbands strength, but his new fleets harry Euron along the Shield Islands. The Reach feeds King's Landing again. Bolton's flayings have turned half the Riverlords to Stannis out of disgust." Tywin inhaled slow. "Men break on the wheel, yet Stannis keeps turning it. The Iron Bank threatens to call your loans. I will pay them. In Lannister gold or in Baratheon debtors' heads, whichever is cheaper." Kevan hesitated. "And Myrcella?" "Still at Sunspear." Tywin's lips thinned. "Martell daggers, wait to strike once we falter. Send Sir Aeron Sarsfield to negotiate her release. Promise anything short of a crown." "Now." Kevan swallowed. "A dragon rumor spreads from Qarth. Some speak of a Targaryen girl reborn in fire." Tywin drummed fingers on the carved elm of his chair. "If a silver-haired wisp gathers sails in Slaver's Bay, let her. Eggshells crack easily beneath gold." He pushed from the table. "Stannis means to choke us with attrition. We must make him bleed faster." "How?" "With northern steel." Tywin's eyes glinted. "Roose Bolton will deliver me Robb Stark's head and Winterfell in flames. Then the North marches south under a red-flayed man, not a direwolf, and Stannis must fight on two fronts. Bam! Kevan's face paled. We dance on swords, brother, he thought, but did not quip aloud. Snow suffocated Winterfell like a white shroud when Theon Greyjoy came riding with 50 men cloaked in Kraken banners. He begged parley at the gate, claiming to bear terms from his father Balon. The North kept its lands east of the Rills if Robb turned south and left Moat Cailin unguarded. Bran Stark, now lord in Robb's absence, listened atop the battlements, Hodor looming behind him. Maester Luwin smelled treachery. Sir Roderick Castle urged refusing audience. But Bran, remembering Theon's laughter along Wintertown streets, commanded they meet in the hall. There Theon bent a knee and swore friendship. Yet the next dawn his krakens burst from hidden snow tunnels, knifed sleeping guards, and threw open the gates for another wave of Ironborn. Winterfell fell with barely a cry. Bran and Rickon vanished, smuggled to safety by the reeds, but rumors soon claimed he'd been slain. Burned boys hung from the gatehouse. When news reached Robb at Harrenhal, his howl of anguish echoed through the gods' forsaken halls. Bolton stood silent, eyes gleaming. Catelyn clutched her son, but grief hardened into raw resolve. Robb summoned every man he could spare and turned north along the King's Road, though winter snow towered high. Bolton volunteered to guard the rear with a token force. Robb, half blinded by pain, agreed, never seeing the cold smile that ghosted across Bolton's pallid lips. Back in the capital, ravens brought tidings of Winterfell's fall. Davos delivered them to Stannis, whose face stiffened. The North will crumble. Bolton cannot hold it. This war multiplies. Tyrion leaned on his cane. Once Bolton flays Winterfell, half the North will join him out of terror. Or join you, if you save them. Send an army north and the realm will name you deliverer. I have no men to spare. Stannis thundered. A siege awaits at Casterly Rock. A siege that bleeds you for Tywin's sport. Tyrion's mismatched eyes glimmered. Strike north first, your grace. You hold the riverlands. A march up the neck with Frey ferries could put your banners outside Winterfell by spring. Frey. The word made Davos bristle. Yet Stannis stared at the map. The wall lies beyond. Bolton will never expect my coming. Melisandre's voice drifted from behind the king's shoulder. Flames show a sword of living fire kindled in northern snow. Go, and the Lord of Light may award you such a blade. Stannis' eyes narrowed. Or burn me like a cinder. But perhaps the fire north is the only fire that matters. He slammed a gauntlet onto the map, pinning Winterfell beneath his fingers. Ready the host. We ride at moonrise. Moonrise found Davos in the belly of a supply wagon arranging casks of pitch, signed with suns and stars. Wildfire disguised beneath arbor seals. The Pentoshi cell sails would carry these onto Euron's hulls, while Stannis rode. Brienne oversaw loading, her rainbow sash glimmering in torchlight. Sir Davos, she murmured. Will the king truly ride north? The men grumble. They fear the Lannister lion will bite at our flanks. Men always fear, Davos answered, lifting a cask with his good hand and his stump braced beneath. We follow our king, and hope the realm still follows us. From the high curtain wall horns sounded thrice. The last of the baggage trains had cleared the mud gate. Beyond, the Rosewad lay like a pale ribbon under stars. Davos slung himself into the saddle of his gelding and joined the column. To either side fires burned in Flea Bottom to ward off chill, though many shivered in thin rags. Princess Shireen, mounted on a shaggy Roundsey, paused on the bridge to toss a purse of copper stars to a knot of children. Their cheers followed her like a benediction. Across the Blackwater, Melisandre stood alone on the quays, her red gown rolling about her like blood-colored mist. She lifted a hand toward the retreating host and whispered in a language older than men. Behind her, the casks of wildfire glimmered beneath moon-silver tarps. Soon they would sail west with cell sails disguised as drunk deckhands, seeking Euron's ships. The night swallowed all. The Lannister heartland in midwinter looked like the bones of something that had died standing up. Golden wheat fields lay under frost, and the woods were black claws against the snow. After half a moon's ride from King's Landing, Stannis van burst through the river gate of River Run now guarded by Tully archers once more. Edmure Tully had retaken it during Tywin's redeployment. Here Stannis paused, resupplying in haste. Edmure pressed a parchment-sealed invitation into Davos' hands, a secret parley at the Inn of the Kneeling Man. 2 nights hence, he hinted Robb Stark would attend. Stannis disliked detours, but Davos urged him to accept. And so beneath a cloudy moon Davos and a lean escort rode south to the lonely inn on the Trident. Within the smoky common room, they found Robb Stark, seated by a single guttering candle, gray cloak furred thickly about his shoulders, gray wind sprawled at his feet. Robb rose, hand pressed to heart. "Sir Davos, I feared we would never speak again save on opposite banks." Davos clasped his forearm. "Your grace risked much to come. The king, my king, marches north to break the Bolton treachery." Robb's jaw clenched. "Theon Greyjoy will die screaming, but Bolton, that snake coils about my counsel like ice around a leaf. Break him, and the north is yours to heal. Yet what price would Stannis levy? Nander. He asks only that the north stand with him until Tywin falls." "The north bleeds," Robb said, voice ragged. "I cannot bleed it more. I propose a simpler trade. Help me retake Winterfell now. I will ride south with you after." Davos felt the weight of the realm in that single bargain. 1 victory bought 2. He nodded. "I will carry your words." Grey wind lifted his muzzle, sensing something unseen, but the night held. They parted in wary respect. When Davos laid the proposal before Stannis days later, the king paced like a caged panther. "At every turn I am drawn away from Casterly Rock," he muttered. "But perhaps the gods, or the Lord of Light, mean me to win the realm, not one castle." He halted. "Base hard. Very well, we join with the north. Ravens fly this dusk." Across leagues of storm-tossed ocean, dragons screamed. Atop a crumbling tower in Meereen, Daenerys Targaryen watched Drogon sweep across the sky like a black bolt of living lightning. The drake's red-gold maw spewed fire over the Yunkish siege camp, scattering beyond the city walls. 2 moons passed. A scrap of ragged sailor's tongue had reached her. Westeros was locked in winter war. Stark-Baratheon held the Iron Throne. A red priest of Aelar had heralded him as Azor Ahai reborn. Dany's lips curved in a cold smile. "Let him be a hero in his plots of ice. I will be the storm of fire." She gathered her war council. Dario's tigers, grey worms unsullied, thousands of freedmen eager for a new world. Ships from Korth awaited in the city harbor. When the next wind blew fair, her navy would set sail. Valyrian sails streaming like dragon wings, prows carved in the shapes of snarling beasts, holds full of spears and victory. Above the fleet, 3 dragons soared. Euron's fleet never reached Meereen. Off the Shield Islands, his longships made tempting targets. Hulls swollen with reach plunder, sailors drunk on stolen arbor wine gifted by Pentoshi traders. When the first cask was broached, wildfire hissed emerald and burst in a bloom of searing light. One ship exploded, then another, chained by grapples. Within heartbeats, the night sea became a canvas of green fury. Euron's laughter echoed even as burning pitch spattered his feathers, and one mad eye bubbled in its socket. He plunged overboard and vanished beneath dragon-bright waves. 3 kraken-proud hulks escaped the maelstrom, limping for Old Wyke. But the Ironborn terror was shattered. Ravens carried the tale to every port. The sea itself burned against the kraken. Fisherfolk hailed the deed as Baratheon sorcery. Merchants called it proof that King Stannis commanded gods of fire. Far inland, the gods had other work. On the stony shores of the lake outside Moat Cailin, Melisandre knelt in the snow, crimson against white. She had traveled with Stannis Van, but now she lingered behind, kindling a small pyre of driftwood and iron swords planted point down in the frozen mud. The flames she coaxed from a single spark glowed scarlet, then orange, then a fierce white that devoured color around it. Into the pyre she cast 3 leeches swollen with blood, 1 for Tywin Lannister, 1 for Roose Bolton, and 1 for Balon Greyjoy. Her lips shaped names in the old tongue, each syllable curling like smoke. Out on the icy lake, cracks echoed like distant thunder. Melisandre's ruby flared. Deep within Casterly Rock, Tywin Lannister collapsed at his war table, clutching a fistful of letters, and never rose. On Dreadfort's parapets, Roose Bolton watched snow swirl, and felt a sudden hollow in his chest, as if cold fingers squeezed his heart. He staggered, breath frosting. And on the wind-swept ramparts of Pike, Balon Greyjoy stepped onto a slick, storm-slick footbridge connecting two towers. A gust tore the hood from his head. In the space between one lightning flash and the next, the wooden plank beneath him snapped. He hurled into black seas roaring below. The news struck Stannis' host like divine thunder. Tywin dead. Heart's blood on the marble of Casterly Rock solar. Balon drowned. Bolton struck by sudden sickness. Men whispered of red magic and fell silent in awe. Some kissed charms, others shuddered, but all marched faster. At the neck, Stannis met Robb Stark's reinforced host at the ruins of Moat Cailin. There, among chipped basalt giants, the two armies clasped. Stannis wore a mailed fist. Robb, the direwolf's head. Together they looked north toward frozen marsh and smoke curling from Winterfell's towers. Davos stood watching as the young wolf and the old stag spoke beneath a battered weirwood whose leaves had fallen. Their breaths plumed white. Winterfell first, Stannis stated. Bolton must break. Break him, and the north is yours to keep whole, Robb replied. Icy pride, masking pain. Shireen rode forward, bundled like a small bear beneath layers of fur. She gazed at Robb with solemn eyes. My father will not break the north, she said. He will mend it. Robb's stern face softened. I should like that, princess. Brienne lifted her visor. To Winterfell, then, she said. And so the great host, stags and wolves entwined, rolled across the whitening world like the tide of some vast, inescapable destiny. In Winterfell's great hall, Ramsay Snow, bastard no longer, wore a cloak of tanned direwolf hide and fed raw sausages to a litter of dogs. Bolton's sickness kept him abed. Maester Polliver bled him nightly with leeches. The bastard commanded in his stead, draping the flayed man banner above the sacred weirwood throne. Torchlight jittered on the pale flesh of two charred shapes suspended at the gate, bodies he still claimed as Bran and Rickon. A shrill horn pierced the falling snow one dawn. Ramsay peered from the parapet. Outside Winterfell's walls banners unfurled. Hundreds of them. Crowned stags, deerwolves, roses entwined with antlers, even smoldering hearts. A sea of spears bristled, gleaming under a wan sun. Thunderous drums rumbled. Ramsay's grin stretched wolf-wide. Lovely, he whispered, drawing a dagger. Let them try the walls. Bolton, gray-faced, lurched onto the ramparts. His voice rasped like dry parchment. Parley before blood, he croaked. Father, Ramsay drawled, your heart is as weak as your body. We flay one of their lords and send the skin. They'll scatter. But horns sounded again. Through the snow strode three figures beneath a white flag. Davos Seaworth, torch in hand. Brienne of Tarth, sword sheathed, and Robb Stark with wolf helm under arm. Ramsay's dogs growled, hackles bristling. He turned to his father, shrugging. Well then, let us see what skin they bring to trade. Intrigue. Within Winterfell's crumbling great hall, torches hissed as snowmelt dripped from rafters. Roose Bolton sat beneath the flayed man banner, too weak to stand, yet his pale eyes glinted. Ramsay lounged beside him, knife spinning between fingers. Davos spoke first, voice carrying the salt of the narrow sea. By King's word, we offer mercy. Yield Winterfell, disarm, and stand trial for treason. Your son and household will be spared should judgment deem it. Ramsay answered with a lazy smile. And what of my pretty banners out front? Brienne's gauntlet creaked as she gripped her pommel. You'll feed those banners to your dogs if you don't choose wisely. Bolton coughed, crimson flecking his sleeve. The north bleeds from too many wounds. We will yield, but we demand guest right for my household until trial. Robb's face was winter steel. You flayed my bannermen, bastardized our laws. I grant you honorable execution if you stand aside. Ramsay's laugh sliced the air. I decline the honor. In one motion, he buried a dagger in his father's chest. Bolton's gasp stuttered. Blood blossomed. Ramsay twisted. To the death, then. Chaos exploded. Brienne's sword flashed free, severing the dagger wrist. Ramsay howled. Davos thrust torch into tapestries. Flames leapt up, crackling. Robb surged for Ramsay, but the bastard rolled, yanking free another knife clipped to his boot. He flung it. The blade caromed off Brienne's gorget. She smashed him with shield edge, sending teeth spraying. Ramsay scrabbled, but gray wind burst through a side arch, fangs bared. He lunged, jaws closing around Ramsay's throat. One savage twist, and a spray of red streaked the snow-dusted stone. Bolton's body slid from the throne, lifeless. The flayed man banner caught fire. Snow drifted in from shattered windows, hissing against flame. Davos upended the last tumbler of wine on the ragged edge of tapestry. Smothering embers. Then he turned to Robb. Winterfell is yours, Stark. Robb knelt beside the iron bolts that held Ramsay's charred trophies. He saw at once they were not his brothers, two farm boys, mutilated. Tears burned. Half joy, half sorrow. My brothers live, he breathed. He rose, facing Brienne and Davos. Let us end this horror. Outside, horns keened victory. Stannis rode through the gates at midday to find Winterfell's courtyards littered with dead krakens and flayed men. He dismounted, boots crunching frost, and clasped Robb's forearm. Justice served, he said. Robb nodded. Bolton chose treason. His bastard chose madness. The North stands with the king who freed it. Shireen dismounted behind her father and walked to the heart tree, touching its pale bark. Snowflakes landed on her grayscale scars and melted. She whispered, "The old gods and the new." Stannis turned to his men. "Light no pyres inside these walls. The Stark dead will rest according to their right." Davos watched wonder flicker in northern faces, a begrudging respect. For the first time he dared to think that perhaps Renly's dream of unity was not dead after all, but walked abroad in battered form. 7 months later, spring sun warmed the ramparts of Casterly Rock. Golden lions carved of stone seemed molten in the light. From high windows, Lannister soldiers spied banners massing beyond the horizon. Crowned stags, deerwolves, roses, and fiery hearts. The realm had come west at last. And at its head rode two kings, one crowned in gold blackened by wildfire, the other crowned only by the trust of the North. Together they pulled the wheel. Within the seaward tower, Queen Cersei paced, barefoot. Her hair hung ragged. Her eyes glittered green glass. With Tywin dead, she commanded only 2,000 men and a dwindling purse. She stood before the iron throne she had carted west in fevered flight, a mockery of power. "I will keep the throne or burn with it," she whispered to the empty chamber. But outside drums beat, horns sang, and siege towers rolled forward in slow, inexorable cadence. On a rocky outcrop half a league away, Melisandre stood cloaked in scarlet. She stared east, beyond the soaring height of Casterly Rock, beyond the rolling plains, toward a horizon none else could see. In her vision, a white wind howled, and shadows walked in snow, and above them a girl of silver hair rode a storm of fire across a midnight sky. Between ice and fire, Melisandre knew, stood one lone king of ash and salt. She closed her eyes and whispered his name to the flames curling in her palm. Azor Ahai. Yet even a red priestess could not say which war would decide the fate of Westeros, the one fought on battlements of stone, or the one growing in silence beyond the end of the world. For now, the clangor of siege rang, and banners snapped, and the world held its breath as two armies closed upon the lion's den. In Cow. In G. The moon hung dull and red above Casterly Rock, as though some vast forge had hammered it into a cooling coal and left it pinned against the sky. Below, 1,000 campfires flecked the dark with sparks. They ringed the great promontory like a necklace of slow-moving embers, and in their glow the sea of tents, siege towers and engines resembled the shell of a gigantic beast, breathing, shifting, bristling with spears. Dawn was hours away, yet the host did not sleep. Hammers rose and fell with metronomic patience. Ropes creaked. Oxen bellowed. The army of the realm was winding itself tight for one last blow. Stannis Baratheon stood upon a wind-carved rock halfway up the slope, cloak snapping against his calves. He watched the lanterns bobbing across the siege lines and listened to the susurrus of men at work. The rasp of saws, the clangor of nails biting wood, the distant groan of the trebuchets as they were cranked back for another night of probing fire. Each sound etched fresh lines beside his mouth. He had marched the better part of a year to reach this place, yet Casterly Rock still loomed impregnable, claws of stone hooked into a sheer sea face no ladder could reach. Only the landward gates could be taken, and there the Lannisters had piled broken carts, iron-bound chests, even quarters of their own shattered furniture to thicken the barricades. They had mined the approaches, soaked the ditches in pitch, salted every opening with granite shards. And somewhere in those tunnels, Cersei hid her wildfire. Footfalls crunched behind him. Davos Seaworth climbed the last ledge, breath misting from his beard. The battering ram will stand ready by first light, Your Grace. Sir Garland's sappers report the north gates. Buttresses hollowed a yard deep. A yard, Stannis echoed, as though the word were a rotten stone he tested beneath a boot. We will need 5. He shifted his weight, and the fur about his shoulders stirred like a living thing. What of the fleet? Safe at anchor. Saladhor's galleys patrol the seaward side. But the Lannister scorpions reach far. They dare not close. Tell him to dare. Stannis' eyes reflected the watchfires below, twin red coals in a visage cut of iron. If the rock bleeds from 2 sides, the crack will widen. I mean to end this before Daenerys Targaryen lands so much as a toe on Westerosi sand. Now. Davos bowed his head. Below them, the dark waves slapped the cliff face in slow, heavy strokes like a reptile testing its prey. He had seen the rock only once before, in the days when he was nothing but a smuggler running onions past Robert's levees. Back then, its lanterns had glowed warmly, promising gold to the loyal and safe harbor to any ship bearing the lion. Tonight, they looked like fever spots. The men whisper, "She is sailing already." Whispers are wind. Stannis cut him off. The girl may have dragons, but dragons do not swim. Let the sea slow her while we make an end here. He turned away from the gray water, scanning the crescent of torches where Stark and Tyrell men commingled in wary truce. How fares the north? Davos followed his gaze. In the center of the crescent stood a high, spiked tower of freshly felled pine. Just visible atop its gallery was a dire wolf banner, gray on white, flapping in the onshore gale. Robb Stark keeps his fighters in tight companies, rotating watches, drilling with crossbows and pikes. They say the Kingslayer's ghost walks inside those walls. The Onion Knight gave a rueful shrug. Walls do not fear ghosts, but the tale pricks the nerves. The dead prick no nerves, Stannis muttered. Men fill their own innards with knives when fear breeds in the dark. He sniffed the salt breeze. Send another letter to Stark. Remind him Casterly Rock ends the line of men who murdered his father and stole his sister's freedom. When dawn breaks, he will press with me at the gate. Davos hesitated. And Lady Sansa? She waits in the keep at River Run still. We promised. A promise kept, so long as her mother's son fights beside us. Stannis' stare flicked across Davos' face, searching for doubt. Words win small folk. Stone wins kingdoms. When the rock falls, the debts can be measured. Davos bowed again, but his stomach twisted. The king had grown flintier with each mile ridden. Renly's dream of mercy and grain trains felt a lifetime distant. A third figure stepped from shadow, cowl drawn. Melisandre's eyes shone as vividly as bloody rubies in torch glow. Stone may crack beneath steel, yet fire alone tempers steel, she said, voice low as a smoldering wick. All stands ready, Lord of Ash and Salt. One spark, and the lion's den will burn clean. Stannis hardened at her title for him but did not deny it. He studied the rock once more, then let the spark fall at dawn. Inside the fortress, Queen Cersei Lannister paced the length of a crimson-carpeted hall, flanked by sculpted columns. Shadows pooled in the coffered ceiling. The only light shivered from a candelabrum upon the high-backed chair where Joffrey's empty crown lay. She had not set foot in this hall since childhood, yet nothing felt smaller. Every pillar seemed to lean toward her, every Lannister lion above the lintels to peer down with gold-leaf scorn. They knew how thin her numbers were, how many wagons of grain had already been set aflame to deny their capture, how few arrows were left in the quivers perched upon the battlements. Sir Osmond Kettleblack lingered beside the door, armor scuffed from endless watch rotations. "Your Grace," he ventured, "the West Gate captain begs fresh barrels of pitch. He fears a storm of torches come sunrise." "Then thou." "He will have his pitch when the catapult crews have their stone," she snapped, turning. "We ration by need, not fear." Her gaze flicked to the iron throne she had carried from King's Landing, a twisted heap of fused blades looming grotesque in the western hall. Some nights she whispered to it, telling it of her father's silent disapproval, of her children's stolen futures, of every slight and bruise. Tonight it glimmered, mute-hot. She wanted wine, but the casks were nearly dry. "How many jars of wildfire remain?" she asked. Kettleblack swallowed. 300 sealed, by the alchemist's count. "Half to the tunnels," she ordered. "Half on the wall-walk cauldrons. We douse our own stones. If they breach, we torch both invader and corridor." Her voice cracked only slightly. "To live, sometimes we must die." A sound, a dry cough, made her spin. Tyrion emerged from a side arch in chains, escorted by twin guards. "Sister," he said, eyes hooded, "I bring grave tidings. Word from the east. Dragon sails sighted off Volantis. Your last hope of waiting Stannis to death drifts away." Cersei's temples throbbed. "You spend your daylight hatching lies." "No lie. The Sellsword fleets flee ahead of her. Pentos closes its gates." He lifted his bound wrists with wry deference. "I merely warn you. Burn the rock, and you hand Daenerys nothing but rubble. Hold it, and you bargain." She stared at him, a dwarf, half broken from months of confinement, yet still smiling as though the walls themselves were his pawns. The urge to strike him flickered, but what point? Her strength had always been the mask of certainty. She turned from him lest the mask slip. "Return him to his cell. At dawn bring him to the gatehouse." Her lips curled. "He will watch his Baratheon friends melt in green fire." Tyrion inclined his shackled wrists. "Ace, the queen commands." Yet when the guards dragged him away, his eyes glittered darkly. Cersei felt that gaze graze her like a knife long after the door slammed. Morning seeped in pale and tremulous, cloaking every camp in faint pearlescence. Frost limned each spear point. Breath rolled from man and horse alike. Robb Stark rose before the sun had cleared the sea horizon. He strapped his father's longsword across his back and descended the pine tower to find gray wind waiting, tails sweeping snow into little crescents. Around them Northmen laced mail, checked bowstrings, cracked jokes too loud by half, all to cage the dread curling inside. War had forged them hard, but even the hardest found cracks when facing stone that legend named unbreachable. Robb stroked his direwolf's muzzle. "Stay with me today, old friend." He crossed the trampled field to Stannis' command tent, a Spartan canvas affair bracketed by 2 crude catapults. Brienne emerged as he approached, helm tucked beneath one arm, her blue eyes storm bright. She nodded once. He readies the order. Inside, the king bent over a plank board upon trestles, the face of Casterly Rock, chalked upon it like a craggy skull. Shireen stood beside him, slender in quilted leather, holding a bucket of ash with which she marked latest scouting notes. Davos, quill behind ear, poured mulled cider as Robb entered. Stannis looked up. "Winter's son, the gate is yours when the ram strikes. I will lead reserve." Robb shook his head. "Reserve won't break a fortress. Put me on the ram, Let the lion hear the North's roar. And the king studied him for a breath, then nodded. Very well. May your father's gods watch. Melisandre glided in, hair loose about fire silk. She offered each man a black ribbon and bade them tie it round their sword hilts. Ash for the ashes of false kings, she murmured. Robb took one out of courtesy, shoved it into his belt. Let us be kings of stone and steel, not smoke, he said. But Melisandre only smiled, as though she heard some other voice echoing in the canvas. Outside, horns pealed across the plain, deep, immense, shaking ice from the air. The drag ram, head forged in the likeness of a stag charging, lurched forward, pulled by 80 men in doubled rows. Shields overlapped above them like a rolling shell. Behind, ranks of spearmen advanced with methodic, deliberate tread. On the far left, the rose banners advanced under Sir Garland's guidance, trebuchets barking great stones to shatter the curtain towers. Davos commanded the right, a wedge of Stormlanders bearing hooked scaling ladders and iron-shod boots. From atop the rock, Lannister warhorns blared reply. Flaming quarrels hissed down. A boulder the size of a small cottage thundered from a mangonel and exploded amid the Tyrell siege tower, smashing oak beams to splinters, hurling bodies through the air. Men screamed. Another stone arced, but this time shattered harmlessly upon the newly raised mantlets of the Stark flank. Everything became motion, clangor, bellow, smoke. Robb reached the ram's head just as scorpions on the wall released a volley. A spear punched through the hide roof of the shelter, skewering the man beside him. Blood sprayed Robb's cheek, hot and startling, but he shoved forward. "Ram to gate," he roared, voice raw. Gray wind, barred from the forward push, howled behind the shield wall, primal and furious. Thump. Daddy. Thump bat. The ram's iron snout slammed against black oak. Sparks leapt each time, pitch seeping through seams, setting the stag's antlers aflame. At the seventh blow, something cracked. Robb glimpsed daylight flicker behind charred planks. He drew his sword. Again. A roar answered, from within the walls. And suddenly, the gate heaved outward, flame bursting through seams. Green flame, oddly bright against dawn's gray. Wildfire geysered in a fountain that engulfed the ram and every man beneath the shelter. Robb felt his brows singe. He stumbled back, choking. Men ran, armor already glowing dull red. Those caught deepest shrieked until their lungs filled with liquid fire, and no sound escaped. Flame rolled across the frozen ground toward Robb like a living tide. But before it could touch him, a torrent of snow burst apart at his side, Brienne slamming her shield down to scoop a trench. She flung packed snow onto the fire again and again. Others followed. Smoke and steam coiled. The green wall guttered, faltered, then collapsed into a carpet of hissing slush. Robb tore off his half-melted helm, gasping. Frost reformed on his lashes in the sudden chill. Above, Cersei's voice carried, amplified by a bronze speaking horn. "First taste is free, wolves. There is more to drink." Robb spat black phlegm. "Again," he rasped, pointing at the gate. But the ram was a twisted pyre and half its crew blackened husks. Panic fluttered among the vanguard lines. Then a new sound rumbled, deeper than catapult, harsher than ram. Stannis' trebuchet, the Leviathan, disgorged a massive stone bound in chains. The missile arced, trailing smoke, and struck a crenellated turret above the gatehouse. Masonry exploded in a gout of dust. Moments later another followed, then a third. The parapet split, stones cascading onto the inner yard, crushing defenders beneath tons of rubble. Under that barrage, Davos ladder teams surged. The first wave burned, but the second reached the wall as the scorpions recranked. A ladder tipped, dumped men into the moat, yet 3 more stuck. Stormlanders scrambled onto the parapets, hacking left and right. The fight fractured into dozens of personal duels. Shouts echoed as Davos himself gained footing, cut down a red-plumed archer, and hauled a Stark banner to the merlons. Far below, Robb saw the scythe arms that braced the gate's oak bars hanging askew under rubble. He seized a fallen Lannister pavis, wedged it into the splintered crack left by the wildfire, pried hard. Brienne jammed her longsword beside it. Wood shrieked. A half-circle of shields formed behind them. Northmen, Reachmen, Baratheon spearmen. Together they shoved. At the eighth shove, the inner bar snapped. The gate groaned inward. Grey wind burst through first, fangs bared, leaping at the nearest mailed sentinel. The direwolf's weight crushed him flat. Robb bounded after, sword gleaming. Inside the yard, the defenders rallied around a granite fountain shaped like a rearing lion. Arrows whistled. Lannister pikemen thrust, but the Northmen crashed into them like a winter tide. Axes biting bronze, mail tearing. Tyrell halberds followed. The yard became a churn of snow and gore. Robb fought his way toward the stairs that twisted up to Lord Tywin's solar. He needed proof of Cersei's fall, needed the victory nailed like a standard upon the wind. But every corridor became a knot of resistance. In the torchlit gloom, Lannister guards fought with cornered desperation. Twice Robb slipped on blood-slick steps. Brienne at his back took a spear through her pauldron but kept moving, eyes wild. At the third landing they met a barricade of overturned tables. From behind it crackled another hiss. Wildfire flasks, 24 at least, stacked like apples. Robb's heart lurched. One spark could collapse the tower. "Stand back." Davos' voice boomed from below. A cluster of archers appeared, bows strung with rag-wrapped arrows soaked in brine. They loosed volley upon volley, slicing down guards who reached for torches. When the last guard fell, Robb vaulted the barricade, scattering the lethal jars with quick, careful kicks. Brienne scooped them into a hearth pan, doused with cistern water, and heaved them out a side window. The corridor beyond opened into the solar. There, beneath towering windows of leaded glass, the Iron Throne crouched, dark, alien, something dragged from nightmare into daylight. Cersei stood beside it in split crimson skirts, wildfire torch in hand. Tyrion knelt shackled at her feet, face streaked in dried blood, one eye half shut. "Come to take your sister, Stark." She turned, and the torch tip painted lurid shapes over her cheekbones. One step and the throne ignites. The rock becomes a tomb for all. Robb halted. Sword halfway raised. "Enough blood, your grace." Lay down the torch. "Walk free, under parole. Your house will keep lands east of the river. No one need die." "Now." Cersei laughed, a jagged sound. "Parole? You presume to bargain? You hold my children's bones in your wagons. You dance to Stannis strings." She shoved Tyrion forward with her boot. "You, dear brother, told me Stannis would not come. Clever dwarf. How will your clever save you now?" Tyrion's mouth twitched. "One does what one must. Take her, Stark." Silence. She lifted the torch. Another voice drifted from the doorway. "Cersei." Stannis stepped in, Lightbringer glowing. All eyes turned. Even the torch seemed dim. His expression was carved from the same metal as the sword he bore. "End it." Cersei's gaze skittered from Stannis to the throne. "You?" Her laugh became brittle glass. "The usurper of usurpers. Robert's dull shadow. I will not kneel to ash." "It is ash you choose." Stannis advanced. "Drop the fire or burn." For a heartbeat that stretched like spun sugar, wind rattled the smashed window panes. Cersei's hands trembled. Then she flung the torch not at the throne, but at the draperies behind it. Flames bloomed. Robb swore, lunged. Brienne hurled herself toward Cersei. The queen drew a small dirk, but Brienne hammered her wrist, sending steel clattering. Cersei backhanded the taller woman, tried for the fallen torch, but Robb tackled her around the waist. They went down in a knot of limbs, rolling dangerously close to the spreading fire. Stannis strode to the burning drapery, pressed Lightbringer's incandescent edge into the flaming cloth. It hissed. Sparks leapt, yet almost miraculously the fabric slumped away, leaving only scorched stone. Smoke poured, but no wildfire jars ignited. Cersei's last gambit failed. Brienne hauled the queen upright. Cersei sagged, eyes wide, lips curling disbelief. Stannis turned, flame halo behind him. "Queen Cersei Lannister," he intoned, "in the name of the Seven and by right of conquest you are taken. Your life shall stand forfeit pending judgment." Cersei's throat worked, but no sound emerged. Mockery, pride, terror, all choked by the moment's enormity. Stannis looked to Tyrion. "Master of coin, no longer a captive. Kneel to my crown, and your counsel may yet serve the realm." Tyrion's crooked grin cracked bloodied lips. "I kneel to saving my skin, Majesty. The realm comes second." He bowed stiffly. Robb released Cersei. Chest heaving. He felt suddenly hollow. It was done. The rock, the symbol of all his family's ruin, had cracked. Somewhere lower in the keep a horn sounded, long and mournful. The lion lay still. That night the banners of Stag, Wolf, Rose and Hart snapped atop Casterly Rock's walls. Inside the yard men picked through smoldering debris. Healers triaged, scribes counted slain. Melisandre moved among them like a column of red smoke, her ruby throbbing. She paused beside Davos, who sat wrapping linen about his burned forearm. Light and shadow twine. Onion night. But the night is long yet. Davos grimaced. "We've won the worst lion's den in the realm." "Say you not that counts?" "It counts for men." Her voice was distant. "But the true war wakes north of the wall. A dead army gathers." Davos followed her gaze eastward. The sky beyond the mountains flickered pale green. The light of dawn, or something stranger. The king will not turn north again surely, not with dragons sailing west. Melisandre's eyes reflected twin flames. He must turn where the Lord of Light demands. Only a king's blood can wield the sword that burns against the cold. "Then thou." Davos' stomach tightened. Renly had been king's blood. So was Shireen. In the inner yard, Shireen herself sat on a low wall, feeding a crust to a wounded horse. Gray wind lolled at her feet. Robb stood nearby, talking in hushed tones. Stannis joined them, bone-tired. When the princess looked up at her father, there was hope in her shy smile. Davos stared, heart leaden. "So many roads," he muttered. "And always new forks." 2 days later, trumpets blared across the western sea as sails erupted on the horizon. White as gulls at first, then red-striped, then black with fire-likeness. Dragons wheeled above masts. On the ramparts, scouts' shouts carried panic. "Targaryen!" Stannis climbed the parapet, studying the armada through a brass lens. 3 great beasts circled, one black as night, one green as summer grass, one cream gold. Their riders were specks. Stannis' jaw set. Robb Stark joined him. "We've food for maybe a moon. No will to fight a third war." Stannis lowered the lens. "Nor will I. Send a raven, invite her to parley." He turned to Melisandre, who had drifted up, crimson hair whipped by sea wind. "Lightbringer cannot slay 3 dragons. Words must." Melisandre's ruby glowed. "Fire meets fire, your grace. Perhaps light requires no sword this time. Only a union." Stannis' brows knit tight, but he nodded. A king sometimes bowed to the strange. At dusk the dragons landed on a wind-scoured spit outside the rock. Their wing beats thundered like God's applause. Men gaped. Ash stirred. Daenerys Targaryen dismounted Drogon, silver hair haloed by ember plume. Beside her strode Missandei, Grey Worm, Dariotot. She approached the parley tent without armor, only a simple smoke-gray gown. Inside waited Stannis, Robb, Marguerite Tyrell newly arrived, Davos and Tyrion unshackled. A hush settled as queen met king. Daenerys inclined her head. "I come not to sack what is already broken. I come to heal." Stannis eyed her dragons through the tent flap. "Westeros bleeds from 100 knives. What heal have you?" She raised her chin. "Justice. Mercy. Death. Fire, where rot clings." A council of kings, not one tyrant's will. Her violet eyes flicked from Robb to Margaery, to Tyrion. Let each realm sit equal, bound under new law. Robb spoke first. The North would stand free, yet allied. Margaery nodded. The Reach seeks peace and harvest. Tyrion snorted. And gold flows better without war, clogging every road. Stannis' knuckles whitened on the table edge. Who sits the throne? Daenerys stepped forward, until only a hand's breadth separated them. No single throne, Lord Stannis. Died. Melt it. Forge a circle. 7 seats for 7 kingdoms, plus 1 for the free folk beyond. Rule together, or fall alone when the dead come. Bendo. Silence tumbled like dice. Behind Stannis, Melisandre's whisper curled. A wheel undone. Slowly, Stannis unsheathed Lightbringer. Its blade pulsed a low, warm crimson. He drove it into the wooden table between them. Embers crawled outward. Smoke rose. Very well, he said. Let fire forge a new realm. Daenerys placed her hand atop the hilt beside his. Together then. Outside, the dragons loosed intertwined cries that shook the air. Beyond the southern horizon, spring sunlight glimmered on thawing rivers. North of the wall, wind howled through black boughs as something vast began to stir. Between the two storms, the leaders of Westeros clasped wrists above a smoldering brand and chose a path untrod, one that might yet save them all, or else drag them into a night no dawn could breach. Well. Salt spray leapt high against the seaward face of Casterly Rock, each burst of white foam catching the pale sun before tumbling back into the green-black water below. A thin trace of early spring warmth gilded the air, yet everywhere men still carried the memories of winter, in stiff shoulders and wary eyes. Inside the Lion Gate, the battered yard where pikes and bodies had lately lain was swept clean. New banners, direwolf, stag, rose, fiery heart, and the 3-headed dragon of Targaryen red, fluttered together upon the ramparts. Their colors mingled in the fitful breeze like paint across a single giant canvas, bright but unblended, refusing to lose their shapes, even as they overlapped. Stannis Baratheon and Daenerys Targaryen paced side by side beneath those banners. They walked without guards today, though the eyes of half an army watched from arrow slits and bailey walls. Behind them Robb Stark limped, one thigh still bandaged where a scorpion bolt had found him, gray wind at heel. Margaery Tyrell glided with unshowy grace a step beyond, her emerald cloak clasped with a golden rose. Tyrion Lannister completed the circle, hands clasped behind his back, face unreadable save for the constant flicker in shrewd, mismatched eyes. 6 days had passed since the parley tent, 6 days in which every waking hour had been devoured by negotiation. They had argued titles first, who might still claim king or queen, who must set such styles aside, and what might replace them. Stannis yielded with the stiffness of a man surrendering a part of his own bone. Daenerys shed queen as a snake shed old skin, sure she would grow a stronger one later. Robb let his northern crown melt quickest, though he insisted on primacy over all matters north of the neck. Margaery said little yet steered much, and Tyrion, obligingly silent on his sister's fate, inserted subtle turns that prevented any single voice from seizing everything. At last they drafted a form and name for what they meant to build. The first assembly of realms, 8 seats in a ring, 7 kingdoms, and 1 kept for the free folk in their wall. The Iron Throne, monument to centuries of conquest, would be struck apart and reforged into those seats, each molded with sigils of the realm it served. On the 7th dawn the forge fires were kindled. That morning's task was grim and simple: to choose the headsman and the judge for Cersei Lannister. They passed beneath a portcullis arch, hung with fresh ivy, and entered the shadowed corridor that led toward the old lord's audience chamber. In the tower above, the smith's hammers rang slow and sure, already splitting rivets and prying blades free from the spire of twisted iron that Robert Baratheon had once hated and Joffrey had treated like a toy. Daenerys listened to each clang as if hearing a beating heart. "Every stroke is a promise," she murmured. Stannis angled his head. "Every stroke is a debt. We melt one tyranny, Another will rise if we prove slower than the steel to cool. A forge must be fed, Tyrion said beside them. And not only with iron. He up-nodded toward the inner door where 2 gold cloaks, wary converts to new livery, stood over Queen Cersei, shackled but still robed in Lannister red. Chains rattled as she straightened, back stiff, mouth cut in the faintest curl of amusement. So, the menagerie arrives. She greeted. A wolf with half a leg, a dragon girl abandoned by her own father, a stag who never grins, a rose that will wave in whatever wind bends her, and my dear brother, returned to me somewhat shorter than I remember, but hardly wiser. Bring out the bread and salt. I might mistake the occasion for a feast where the smell's not so poor. Her green gaze lingered on Daenerys. My, you are younger than rumor. And you older, Daenerys replied without heat. Your trial is set for sundown. We come only to offer you choices. Choices? Cersei's laugh was a single bright bark. The last man who promised me choices placed my son in a silk shroud before the moon turned. She flicked a look at Tyrion. And that choice sits here now, comfortable on fine cushions of dead men. Will the court be as forgiving of regicide in a dragon's claws? Stannis stepped forward, Lightbringer scabbarded across his back, but still seeming to glow through the leather. Your guilt lies in war waged upon innocents, wildfire upon the Blackwater, poison brewed for rivals, every bolt fired at a fleeing child in King's Landing's alleys. Regicide? The realm will judge Tyrion for Joffrey's death when time serves, but that matter rests beyond today. Menmasator. Robb Stark's voice rumbled lower, roughened by smoke-scarred lungs. Today we try the woman who ordered Ned Stark's head struck from his shoulders. And if the court finds guilt, the sentence falls swift. Cersei's expression thinned. Swift? How brisk of you, boy wolf. She cocked her head at Margaery. Have you taught your pet northerner a Tyrell's love of pruning knives? Margaery ignored the barb, addressing Daenerys instead. If mercy may strengthen our newborn compact more than blood, is it not worth a breath to weigh? Mercy serves the realm if mercy serves the wronged, Daenerys answered. Lady Catelyn lives, though widowed by grief. The decision must involve those who bear the deepest wounds. She sails up the Mander with Edmure Tully even now, Robb said. And Sansa travels from River Run. Until they stand, final sentence cannot. He met his enemies turned allies in the eye. My mother's voice is mine and my sister's. When they speak, I shall answer. A muscle twitched in Stannis' jaw. He disliked delay. Davos weathered worry lines showed the same earlier. Yet even Stannis conceded the new assembly must prove itself by heeding more than swords. Daenerys gestured for the guards. Confine her under watch. Feed and water. No cruelty beyond the chains. She met Cersei's gaze directly. When the verdict comes, your bearing this day will weigh upon it. Consider. Cersei said nothing while they led her away. But as her crimson skirt swirled through the arch, she spoke so soft only the rulers in the hall could hear. You build a better world from the bones of lions. Pray your beasts never grow hungry themselves. Then she vanished, echoing chains the last sound left behind. 12 days later, Catelyn Stark arrived, riding beneath soft green banners stitched hastily in River Run's last quiet nights. Her hair had silvered since the first day of war. The wind of the western sea tugged at strands that once would have been carefully cut. Yet no daughter of Tully ever sat a mount more proudly. She swung down in Casterly Rock's outer yard, ignoring pavilions still half collapsed where slain Lannister grooms had been burned, and strode straight for her son. Robb greeted her with a crushing embrace. Grey wind huffed, circling, before lowering his great head in recognition of the lady he had once sniffed in Winterfell's cold courtyards. Catelyn took the measure of Daenerys and Stannis beneath the keep's tall shadow. Her courtesy was perfect. A deep curtsy to both, a measured nod to Margaery Tyrell, and finally a cool, searching glance for Tyrion Lannister. My lord, my daughter's well-being yet remains a debt your house must pay. Tyrion inclined his head, the lines about his mouth hard. Sansa Stark dismounted next, swathed in a gray mantle sewn with tiny silver leaves. She walked more slowly, for her ankles still remembered broken bones from King's Landing's dungeons. When Tyrion stepped forward, she paused, eyes wide. He bowed from the waist. No jest, no flourish, just a penitence as real as any in the yard. Sansa stared a moment, then offered a formal nod. Nothing forgiven, nothing released, only an acknowledgement that time had moved them both further than chains. Within an hour, the makeshift throne chamber was readied. The vaulted hall that had once displayed Lannister trophies felt smaller beneath rows of silent watchers, knights of Highgarden, tall Karstarks, and Umbers, the black cloaks of a handful of Night's Watch brothers, who had ridden south with desperate word of raiders breaching east tunnels below the wall. Men of the free folk, Tormund Giantsbane among them, a red pelt thrown over broad shoulders, stood at rear with spears reversed as show of peace. 8 chairs had been hewn from oak and plated with shards of the melted iron throne. They sat in a semicircle, 7 only, the 8th still empty by design, raised upon a low dais of hastily laid pine. Above each seat hung a fresh banner. Stags and wolves and dragons hung shoulder to shoulder, equal cloth, none higher than the rest. Cersei was brought in, her red dresses exchanged for plain wool the color of dried blood. She was pale, but composed. Chains remained, though finer ones. As she crossed the hall, a hush spread like frost. When she reached the floor's center, Tyrion detached from the shadows and limped to the witness ark, there to stand half-facing both benches. By courtesy he would speak for the defense, such defense as could be mustered. Cersei's gaze brushed past him without a flicker. Stannis, occupying the stag chair, struck the butt of Lightbringer once upon stone to open the session. The sound rang up the columns. He recited the charter, the assembly's first, that no single voice should pronounce life or death, though majority might. He recognized Lady Catelyn Tully Stark, first accuser, and motioned for her tale. Catelyn spoke of Ned on his knees beneath Beller's sept, of the headsman's sword flashing in torchlight, of daughters torn from screams into silence, and of the false words Joffrey paraded when he seized a throne he had no right to wield. She spoke calmly, though twice her voice wavered and Robb's hand slipped over hers to steady. When she finished, a low murmur stirred across the benches. Even sea-hardened Saladhor Saan, perched among the Tyrell lords, dabbed at an eye. Cersei's turn came. She lifted her chin. "Yes," she said clearly, voice carrying in the high chamber. "I ordered him killed. He knelt in treason, risking civil war if spared. My son's crown was his birthright, or so I believed. I would do it again to save my children." She spoke of Robert's blows, of fear for Myrcella and Tommen, of prophecy whispered by a certain forest witch whose predictions had shadowed her childhood. She offered no apology. She did not ask forgiveness. All she asked was understanding. "Judge me in full measure, not by half-truths." Next Tyrion addressed the seats, reminding them of Wildfire's carnage, ordered by Cersei's hand, yet turned by him to save the city, of small folk fed in famine by grain she released, of Tywin's harsh reigns that once held her, forging cruelty from fear. He painted her neither martyr nor monster, only a woman born to lion's teeth. The assembly broke to confer. Robb's seat demanded death. Stannis, after a silence long as tide, agreed. Margaery wished life imprisonment. Daenerys hesitated, seeing lessons from Meereen. She understood how vengeance fertilized rancor. The tide wavered at 4 votes, 2 for execution, 2 for chain. The Reach seat eyed famine still gnawing villages. They weighed Mercy's message heavier. Last to speak was the yet vacant 8th seat. Jon Snow, Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, had not arrived. The Free Folk chair remained unclaimed. But a voice rose from the gallery. Tormund Giantsbane strode forward, hair flaming beneath chandeliers. He could not sit that seat until customs were penned. He knew, yet he spoke as if the back of a mammoth was beneath him. "Murder's a sour cup," he said, "but revenge sweeter still only for a blink. After, it lies rotten in the gut. I've eaten both." He thumped his chest. The real foe comes on white feet. When he's here, you'll wish every sword remained sharpened for him. His words tipped the scales. Daenerys exchanged a glance with Stannis, then with Catelyn. Wordless, freighted. Catelyn bowed her head, a single nod. Her green eyes glistened, but steadied. And so they voted. 5 for life, 2 for death, 1 seat still unfilled and silent. Cersei heard the verdict with unreadable eyes. She bit her lip once, drew blood, but said only, "So the wheel creaks to turn. We shall see if it breaks before summer." She was led away to a tower room. High, guarded, its windows set with iron bars. Once she had been prisoner in King's Landing's dungeons, afraid of dank and clawing rats. Now she occupied a cage of sunlit stone with a view good enough to watch the sea swallow what remained of her father's fleet each dusk. Whether mercy or cruelty, time would decide. That evening Daenerys climbed a narrow stair to Casterly Rock's war roost, where Drogon crouched upon a jut of stone, wings spread for warmth in the chill air. His hide was night-dyed in ember veins, and his eyes glowed coals. From here she saw construction below. Smiths feeding dampened forges, artisans chiseling seats, Night's Watch riders sharpening dragonglass arrowheads under torches. Footsteps approached loud against stone. She turned to find Stannis halting a respectful distance. His brows furrowed under the gleam of brazier light. "You spared her." "We spared ourselves," she corrected gently. "We declare a new law above old grudges. If the first stone we place is vengeance, the wall rises crooked." He studied Drogon's serrated shadow cast upon rock. "Crooked things may still stand if every course follows the bend, or tumble the moment wind shifts." She paced toward the crenel. "I have burned masters, slew them for slaves, yet slavery returned in secret markets, hidden behind kinder names. Walls of mines, not corpses. And swords," Stannis said. "Ice swords coming south." He told her then of the ravens that reached hours earlier. Eastwatch's outer palisade toppled in unnatural storm. Rangers vanished on the Frostfangs, wildling villages swallowed by snow, where no summer wind touched. "Jon Snow rides hard to us, 200 of his best. He seeks dragon's fire and our forged alliance before the wall falls." Daenerys laid a palm upon Drogon's hot scales. "Then north we fly." Stannis' jaw flexed. "Many will call it madness. We just bled half a kingdom dry. Ships lack crews, fields lack seed. Men are sour. If the dead cross, none of that matters." Her voice softened. "Your daughter told me of prophecy, princes that were promised, swords of light. I heed prophecy less than need. Living children breathe now. They breathe tomorrow only if we ride where death steps first." Stannis tilted his head, curious. "And the assembly?" "They sit," she answered, "learning to argue without spears until we return. If we fail, they die anyway. If we triumph, they inherit a world worth governing." He grunted, half approval, half resignation. "I shall saddle. Dawn? Then? Before." He turned to leave, but paused. "My lords call you queen still behind your back. Let them." Her eyes met his, over Drogon's ridged wing. "I do not need a crown to do what must be done." He inclined his head, neither homage nor dismissal, something rarer between such flinty souls. Acknowledgement. 3 mornings later, the northern host broke from the rock in a long, sinuous train. Stannis storm helms beside stark gray cloaks, Tyrell outriders supplying grain mash and seed oats, Dornish sand steeds trotting in bright scarlet harnesses. Prince Doran had sent a token wing, honoring the new charter. Above them, 3 dragons wheeled. Drogon in the van, Rhaegal emerald bright, Viserion pale as new straw. The people lining the coastal road watched wordlessly, peasants who yesterday had feared these same armies, now seeing in them a lance aimed at some far unseen darkness. They marched first to Fair Isle to resupply, then along the ocean road east where rock gave way to field. In Golden Grove, 1,000 volunteers joined, having lost brothers to Euron's last raids. When it became clear this army marched not for conquest but for the wall, the levies almost outpaced grain carts. Stannis placed Davos in charge of training each slew of willing yet unblooded men, pairing them with vanguard survivors. The Onion Knight drilled dawn till dusk. Shield wall, dragonglass dagger, torch and oil. Every 10th man learned to loose arrows fletched in obsidian, for steel might shatter on rime-hardened bones. The golden fields of the Reach faded behind them. Barrows and old stone men dotted the barrowlands. Forests thickened, shadows learning cold again. Near the neck, swamps sucked at hooves, and summer-rot mosquitoes bit through ringmail. Yet the haunted marshes birthed allies. Crannogmen in reed boats, gifts of poisoned frog spears, secrets of hidden causeways. Howland Reed himself emerged, thin and quiet as legend, pressing a bundle into Robb's hands. Leather-wrapped daggers shaped from midnight stone older than memory. "You guard the fire with night," he said in voice soft as rushes. "Blood of the North answers blood only by standing." Winterfell's broken towers came into view on the 12th dawn. Snow had receded to ragged patches, revealing scars of fire Ramsay Bolton left. Shattered gates now rebuilt, courtyards scraped to clean slate. Sansa caught her breath when she saw them. Home twisted yet standing. Candles burned in windows, grain sacks towered near granaries. Women bent to mending harness leather. Boys practiced with blunt spears. No banners of flayed men flew now, only the direwolf and, for the first time, the sigil of the Night's Watch, a black field night sky pricked by a single white star. Jon Snow had come and brought ghosts of the walls chill with him. He met the host outside the broken inner gate. His black cloak was travel-stained, hair longer than Robb remembered, eyes both warmer and older. They embraced as brothers who had feared they'd never have chance. Jon thanked Stannis with grave candor for the army. He bowed to Daenerys, though his gaze flicked wary to her dragons aloft. He clasped Margaery's hand with murmur of gratitude for wagons of grain the Reach had pledged to castles along the Gift. "The wall stands, barely," he told them that night, in the great hall, where fires roared hot, as if defying memories of Ramsay's chill. Yet rangers on the Nightfort Road saw columns of mist moving south. Shapes within, eyes blue as glacier fire. Before moons wax full, they will reach the gate unless stopped beyond. He spread a map across the repaired table Eddard Stark once used. Here, the gorge narrows. A ravine flanks east slope, ice cliffs west. If dragons strike, fire could break them there, while infantry holds choke. But more than swords, we need flame and dragonglass. Gendry, pulled from smith fires at Casterly Rock, stood from a bench. "We melt 10,000 spear points a day if coke enough," he said. "Give me coal. I'll forge shafts that pierce things even Valyrian steel feared." Daenerys asked for distance by air. Jon said 2 long hours' flight, less on dragon wing. She nodded. The plan formed in minutes, shaped by need, sharpened by desperation. Only Stannis voiced what others dared not. "If the wall should fall while we toil in gorges, realm behind is lost." "Then it must not fall," Jon replied. "We stake all upon one dawn." Elsewhere in Winterfell, Shireen and Sansa walked the godswood. Icicles dripped from heart tree limbs, pools mirrored dragons circling overhead. Shireen traced the trunk, feeling rough grooves like old scars beneath her palm. "Your father prayed here," she whispered. Sansa smiled faintly. "He did. He would have liked you. You read too much and questioned more." Wind rustled the branches. Shireen looked at sky beyond leaves. "Do you fear the dead?" "I fear forgetting the living," Sansa said. "Fear letting anger turn me into the thing I hate." She exhaled a white plume. "But I will fight anyway." Shireen slipped grayscale-scarred fingers into Sansa's. Together, they sat under the tree's red leaves until first stars pricked. The night before departure, a horn blew thrice from the parapets. Jon and Daenerys climbed to the roof walk. North of the keep, a figure approached, gaunt man upon rangy elk. His skin was pale as snow, hair white shock, cloak sewn of ragged feathers. Some recognized the tales. The last green seer of the children's prophecy. No, closer. Jon whispered his brother's name. Benjen. Yet the rider swung down stiffly. Blue frost rimed his beard, skin mottled gray, not wholly human. He held aloft a single knotted root, carved into spiral. The dark breathes, he croaked, voice carrying unnatural echo. And it knows your fire. Jon stepped toward him. Uncle. But the man, whatever he now was, extended the root to Daenerys. Frost steamed where her hand neared, yet did not freeze. A seed of dragon within ice. He rasped. Burn it, and the storm's heart quails a heartbeat. She accepted the relic gingerly. It pulsed with faint warmth, though rhymed with hoarfrost. Benjen swayed, pain twisting. Drogon landed hard behind Daenerys. With a cry like shattering ice, the rider collapsed. When Jon knelt, frost already crept along his limbs. The change had seized too deep. No flame nor plea coaxed breath back. They burned him at dawn with Night's Watch right. The root alone remained, char unmarred by flame. Tyrion, studying from vantage atop a wall, murmured that there were more mysteries in half a twig than in whole libraries of Old Town. Melisandre's red eyes gleamed brighter. She traced symbols in ash around the root, muttering that the Lord's own hand carved this long ago. Davos felt ill ease but held tongue. Truth mattered only if it saved them. On the cold shelf of the gorge 4 days later, armies arrayed. Snow fell in thin needles. To the west, cliffs dropped ragged into forested dark. To east, a sheer rise of glacial blue. Dragonglass stakes lined the outer rim, coated in pitch, ready to light. Spears glinted obsidian. Jon rode down the line, cloak black but pinned now with a silver wolf gifted from Robb. Men of Night's Watch saluted. Free folk hooted glee. Northern levies slammed spear butts on shields and rolling thunder. Stannis took position on center ridge with Florent men bearing Stagenheart war drums. Margaery's archers deployed left flank, Tyrell longbowmen knocking black-feathered shafts. Gendry's newest ballistae crouched at vantage high on eastern slope, each bolt tipped with coiled glass. Among them all, the dragons roved restless. Daenerys whispered to Drogon. Rhaegal snorted smoke. Viserion's tail lashed drifts into spirals. She wore no crown, only a leather harness and a sword of dragonbone across her back. Then the horn of the watch, one long blast, echoed through chasm. From the north, mist poured like liquid stone. Branches cracked under heavy frost, though no wind stirred. Through veils of snow, strode pale shapes, armored in ice, eyes burning blue. Behind them, deeper darkness moved. Whites, thousands, a crawling tide of limbs all stiff in the same obedient rhythm. At their van glinted the king's crown, a crown of serrated ice spikes around death-pale brow. Stannis lifted Lightbringer high. Its heat fought sun's feeble glow, casting crimson gleam on snow. He shouted once, wordless challenge. The ground throbbed with answering drums. Roses, stags, wolves, Tyrell trumpets, Night's Watch horns. Fire danced along pitched trenches, hissing sparks. Dragons took wing. Drogon plunged first, flame jetting wide, carving trenches of molten snow that refroze glassy. Rhaegal and Viserion crossed behind, weaving braids of emerald and cream fire. Whites ignited in clusters, blackening like dried leaves. The spearhead faltered, but the Night King raised one arm. Frost wind swelled. Fire dimmed, smoke pulled sideways, then extinguished in a curious silent rush, leaving steam rolling across bone. Ice spears shot from empty air, hurled upward by wind, striking Viserion's flank. He shrieked, banked hard. Blood of molten gold spattered white slopes below. Dany's heart lurched, but she kept seat, driving Drogon in tight arc to rake frost javelins with renewed flame, shielding brother dragons. On ground, Jon shouted charge. Northmen surged forward, shields locked. Obsidian blades clashed with brittle ice armor. Whites shattered to shards, limbs flailing. Yet for each cut down 2 more pressed. Karstark archers loosed. Tyrell bowmen followed, arrows falling like black hail. Many found hearts of blue glass, bodies spasmed, collapsed motionless. Still, the press continued. Fallon Umber led a boarhead wedge into the center, smashing undead ranks apart. Beside him roared Tormund, long axe cleaving. A giant white bear of ice barreled through line. Tormund leapt, axe biting skull. Bear toppled, crushed a dozen behind. Stannis and Brienne carved a path toward the Night King himself. Lightbringer sang red fire streaks. Brienne's new dragonglass-edged greatsword whistled blue sparks from every strike. They fought side by side, perfect rhythm. One high, one low, splitting skulls, severing frozen tendons. But the Night King's lieutenants slid toward them, pale warriors in armor like shattered mirrors, blades forging hoarfrost trails in air. They engaged Brienne, meeting her blows with ringing shrieks. Frost spread along her blade each impact. Above, Viserion still limped, but turned to strafe again. An ice spear grazed his wing. He spun out, tumbling. He crashed on eastern slope with avalanche roar. Snow plumed high. Daenerys felt the pain through Drogon's chest. She screamed his name, but Rhaegal banked low to shield the fallen brother. In central Gorge, wildling bonfire trenches flared as Davos men hurled torches. Flames reawakened where Dragon's first breath still smoldered under crust. Whites stumbled into pits shrieking. Yet the Night King advanced unhurried, frost curling behind each footfall. He raised a hand again. Fallen men, both white and living slain, trembled, then rose anew, eyes turned blue. Panic rippled lines, gaps widened. Robb Stark, shoulder red with enemy blood, saw northern levies waver. He ripped off helm, letting snow settle on sweat-damp curls, and lifted Ned's blade skyward. "Winterfell," he roared. The cry surged through ranks. Spears steadied. As risen whites flung themselves, Robb met them, striking left and right, gray wind tearing throats at his side. Still numbers told. Jon, dueling a lieutenant with gleaming crystal sword, heard horns from the rear. One long, one higher. The wall signal that Eastwatch gate shook. Another attack behind their line? He could not break free to see. Daenerys, seeing lines bend, spurred Drogon higher. They climbed into icy wind until her eyes watered. The root Benjen delivered hung at her belt, knotted like a heart. Now it glowed faint amber. She drew it forth, mind racing with Melisandre's half-heard whisper. A seed of dragon within ice, burn it, and the storm's heart quails a heartbeat. She pressed it against Drogon's hot scales. The root flared sudden crimson, then bled bright molten light down his hide. Drogon roared, a note deeper than any he'd made, thunder rolling. Flames burst from his jaws, not orange, not red, but luminous white tinged blue at edge. Hotter than blacksmith heaven, hotter than forge. He dove. Where that fire touched ice armor, it did not melt, it vanished. Air cracked like glass around the blast. The Night King glanced up, expression unreadable. Drogon's gout struck the frost crown. For one instant, white flame wrapped the tall figure, and the world seemed to hold breath. Then the crown screamed, a sound like splitting glaciers. Ice armor webbed with fissures. The spear he held softened, dripped. Blue eyes widened as cracks raked his chest. He raised hand again, but the second surge of white fire hit, and light swallowed him whole. When brightness faded, nothing remained but drifting steam and shards that sublimated mid-air. Across battlefield every white stiffened. Some began to shatter where they stood. Others dropped like dolls with cut strings. The lieutenants faltered mid-strike. Brienne cleaved through one whose body turned to sleet as it fell. Lines gasped. Then cheers broke, tumbling, echoing against cliffs. Tormund swung axe skyward, roaring delight. Northmen chanted names. Jon Snow, Daenerys, dragon, king, queen, blurred into thunderous clamor of living victory. But not all dead crumbled. A ragged remnant still clawed and bit. Wildlings hacked them down, though fewer by each heartbeat. Farthest ranks still fought, unaware, until arrows whistled them apart. Within half an hour silence fell, broken only by dragon wings beating and the muffled sobs of wounded. That night they burned pyres taller than Winterfell's gate. Fallen friends lay with honor. Tyrell archers, Watch brothers, Reed spearwives, Stormland boys barely bearded. Even a few free folk taken by chill were sent skyward in flame. Songs stitched of old tongue and common weaving across star-bright dark. Viserion healed under Rhaegal's shelter, wings splinted with boiled leather. Dragons seemed subdued, as if they too mourned, curling tails around glowing coals near the pyres. Stannis stood apart, watching blue-white embers carried on wind. Davos approached. "We lived." "The realm lived," Stannis corrected, though his shoulders slumped in relief. He gestured to pyres. "We must build world worth their cost." Across the field, Daenerys and Jon walked slow between rows of makeshift burial cairns. Snowflakes drifted, melting on dragonfire-warmed stones. They stopped before Mound of Night's Watch brothers clustered around Benjen's charred mask. She touched Jon's arm. "He guided us even dead." Jon's voice rasped. "And paid twice over." They stood silent long moments. At last, Jon lifted gaze to Daenerys. "The Assembly's 8th seat, or 9th now, if free folk claim one, needs the Watch. But the wall is broken in places. My vows keep me there. And my dragons must heal," she said. She turned, meeting Robb, Margaery, Tyrion, Stannis, all approaching amid torch glow. Yet plans may change. The wheel may still find ways to turn. Tyrion stopped before them, snow and hair sparkling like absurd circlet. "Wheels turn," he agreed. "Yet sometimes the mule pulling it chooses the road." He tapped Jon's chest. "Your road leads south eventually, Crow King." "After rebuild," Jon said. Stannis planted Lightbringer in earth. Flame-along blade dimmed for first time in memory, as though spirit within finally sated. "Let the Assembly reconvene at Harrenhal come harvest. We will seat every realm, free and crownless alike, to sign charter under witness of Dragonflame." Daenerys nodded. Robb clasped Stannis' forearm. Margaery offered quiet pledge of grain and builder masons. Somewhere distant, hammer of the waters rumbled as ice broke on river. Spring melt awakening. Above them, first dawn since battle-painted sky with strokes of rose and gold. Drogon lofted from hilltop, circling pyres once, then soared east toward breaking sun. His scream carried across the north, a cry not of war but of promise. In its echo hearts beat faster with anxious hope. They had halted death's march for a time. They had unmade a throne of swords, yet peace, like forged steel, would cool too quickly if not quenched in common purpose. Winter's longest night had passed, but its shadows still lingered. Still, beneath new banners and newborn council, men and women found themselves blinking into morning, not ruled by lion or corpse. They saw slopes where dragon flame had melted centuries of dread, revealing seed soil dark and rich. They saw children tugging at soldiers' cloaks, half awed, half laughing. They saw futures unimagined a season before. And in those sights, they kindled resolve. To mend ruined keeps, to sow barley in churned battlegrounds, to carve chairs from broken blades, to speak until voices hoarse, rather than let spears speak for them again. Perhaps wheel would break, perhaps it would grind anew. But for this breath, this sunrise, they walked willingly beneath its hopeful shadow, determined to steer rather than be crushed in endless turning. Thus the song of ice and fire entered its quietest verse. Quiet not for absence of storm, but for that fragile hush between thunder peals, when even gods lean close to hear what mortals choose next. The rains that rode the first true spring swept across Westeros in sweeping, petulant curtains. One moment silver sheeting the sky until rivers frothed over their banks, the next moment blown away by winds full of sun and sudden warmth. They came from the west, washing dragon-scored gorges and the churned graves of the undead until black soil showed again. Then they rolled east, scouring hills where tents and catapults had sprawled like a boil, rinsing blood and grease from broken helms. With them came the first wildflowers, purple as bruises, bright as copper, stubborn in ruined ground. Children in villages no lord had bothered to name knelt to pluck the petals, half disbelieving that color could still exist. Messages rode the rain too, tied to ravens' legs or tucked beneath wax on thin slivers of parchment. Each bore the sigil of whatever realm sent it, but all repeated the same summons: Harrenhal at harvest. The words were Stannis, penned in that cramped, relentless hand of his, yet they went out on the wings of a dozen seals. Robb Stark sent them north from Winterfell. Marguerite Tyrell's scribes copied them onto vellum trimmed with rosewater. Daenerys had them translated into the spice tongue for sail captains still lingering in Qarthian waters. Even the shattered Iron Islands received one, delivered by a maimed seagull that flopped half-dead upon Pike's tallest rookery. Yara Greyjoy cracked the seal and laughed until salt tears stung her wind-chapped lips. In every keep and cottage, folk puzzled. Harrenhal, a cursed ruin, some said, still haunted by the wails of prisoners burned alive when Aegon's dragons gutted it with a single breath. Others whispered of worms in the walls, of cracked stones that swallowed men whole. Yet the summons called, and curiosity, hunger, ambition, hope, all these pried men from their hearths. They went south and east and west, along roads where spring's muddy veins hardened into passable ruts. And they carried with them stories that grew like vines around a trellis, of a dragon queen who rode night itself, of a stern Baratheon king who bent his knee to no one but sat now beside a wolf child and a flower bride, of the wall broken, then mended in a single dawn by fire so bright it whitened snow to glass. Above those rumors, other winds blew quieter. Davos Seaworth stood in Winterfell's new smithyard and watched Gendry hammer black steel until sparks hissed around his bare forearms. He watched recruits of the Night's Watch drill beside Karstark spears, in formations Jon Snow had learned from free folk hunting packs. And he watched Stannis' daughter roam between, asking questions the way a bee investigates every petal for hidden nectar. Shireen glided with a notebook and a charcoal stub, sketching fresh sigils. She had devised 20 already. A golden sunburst to mark all hospitals funded by the Assembly Treasury. A tree entwined with a 7-pointed star for new septs that would welcome worship of both old gods and new. She reminded Davos of a lantern hung before a storm door. Small but so stubbornly bright that sailors might yet find harbor. It was Melisandre who named the lantern's cost. The Lord sees ash where mortals dream of roses, she said to Davos one evening, her red gown dark in the half-light. They stood beside Winterfell's Godswood pool, its mirror surface still crowded with ice floes like broken ivory plates. You cherish the girl, so does he. But blood kindles light. No, Davos snapped, and the word echoed off alabaster bark. He had never spoken so sharp to her. We've had enough of king's blood spilled to please your flames. Renly's ghost walks every step of our king's conscience. A faint smile softened her mouth, but her eyes shimmered ruby. Then pray there is no darkness deeper than conscience waiting at Harrenhal. He turned away, but her words followed like drifting embers. That night Davos found Stannis in the library the umbers had patched with new roof slates. Scrolls lay scattered like molt feathers around the king's feet. A single candle ringed his hooded face in amber. You brood on prophecy, Davos said without preface. Stannis snorted. Prophecy is a chain round the ankle of resolve. Yet, chain or not, we near the last link. He tapped a charcoal sketch of that monstrous keep. 5 towers like grasping fingers, lake black as melted lead. Harrenhal is a wound on the land. We lay our new order there or bleed into it forever. Davos lowered to one knee, sorting the scrolls. And the girl? Shireen is my heir. No torch will touch her. Stannis glanced at the chamber door, as though flames might seep beneath the threshold. So swear it. If my resolve cracks, you bar the way. Davos swallowed. By sea and salt, by sword and onions, I swear. He almost reached for the king's forearm, but the moment felt too perilous for comfort. In the high vale, Sansa Stark watched sunlit mist swirl around the Ares pinnacle spires. She had ridden there at Catelyn's behest, a delegate to Rabbits the Vale Lords still chased across politics. Lady Erin's death had left the castle in the hands of young Lord Robin, flighty as ever, and in the firm grasp of his assembled regents. They squabbled, half wishing for Lannister favor still, half fearful Stannis' reach would prove longer than any falcon flight. So Sansa became the North's voice, masked under the alias she had carried since flight from King's Landing. Elaine Stone no more, but herself again, and yet not. She spoke of the charter they would sign. She painted the assembly's circle, 8 seats burnished from the Iron Throne's melted steel. She promised the Vale its own if it sided now. Lord Royce believed, Bronze Bones recognized iron truth. Lady Waynwood believed, when she learned Jon Snow commanded Watch and Wolf alike. But Nestor Royce hesitated, brow heavy with doubt. Harrenhal, that shell has swallowed armies. Sansa let him walk the parapets overlooking leagues of pale cloud that glowed gold and lavender at dawn. By dusk he signed. The day she departed, a raven from Robb awaited. Bring the veiled banners, sister, and you will stand forth in the assembly. She folded the message, heart thrumming. For years she had been captive, pawn, bride, hostage. Now she tasted authority and felt as though she had slipped into borrowed boots that happened, miraculously, to fit. As her party wound down the dizzying Giant's Lance trail, the world yawned wide. Far south, the ghost of King's Landing smoke still scarred the horizon. Southwest, a pale flicker suggested Casterly Rock where Tywin's golden lions once roared. But east lay the Trident Valley, and beyond its muddy veins Harrenhal, crouched amid blasted earth. From this height, it looked no different than any fortress. Only in dreams did she glimpse melted towers frozen in contorted agony. She understood then what her mother meant. Confront the shape of fear, or wear its chains forever. She pressed heels to her mare and rode faster. Those same weeks across the sunset sea, ships in Marine's Bay watched the world's strangest passenger board. Jorah Mormont wrapped himself in a wool cloak dyed midnight. Patches of still pink skin on his forearm marked where Daenerys' healer had cut the last corruption of grayscale away. He had refused titles, refused command, yet when Dany's fleet sailed, he lingered behind, to gather what allies might still answer a bear's roar. Now he watched the last hulks weighed anchor, crimson-black sails catching sunrise. He felt the tug of loyalty like iron in his gut, but he did not curse it. Duty had brought him halfway around the world. Perhaps it would bring him home again. Home to bear and dire wolf and stag in uneasy brotherhood, if they would even suffer a disgraced exile amongst them. In the ashes of Flea Bottom, Qyburn moved through alleys like a specter of sickness. Where plague once devoured breath, he slipped among hovels, distributing broth infused with herbs only he named. With him walked a silent knight, armored head to toe in dull steel, face hidden behind an emotionless visor. None recalled seeing the knight eat or speak. Many whispered he smelled faintly of embalmer's oils. Yet his greatsword, slung across a broad back, served as surety while Qyburn murmured to half-starved men about promises unkept and queens who ought to reign. Her grace waits, Qyburn would confide, pressing packets of powdered leaf into calloused hands. She remembers those left behind while dragons soar above fat lords' councils. And the hands, hungry, suspicious, closed over the gift. Treason found root in famine's cracks. One evening, a lantern flickered near a collapsed wall. Qyburn ducked beneath. The knight watched the alley mouth. In the half-lit nest of rubble, a girl and boy huddled over a half-roasted rat. "Have you bread?" the girl asked, voice hoarse. "Better." Qyburn offered day-old crusts soaked in oily broth. As they ate, he spoke. Of a broken queen seeking justice, of armies drained and divided heading north, chasing shadows, of an escape, almost ready, under a moonless noon. At that phrase, the boy wrinkled brow. "Noon's never moonless, master." "Ah," Qyburn smiled thinly. "Look to the sky, you'll see." He departed, leaving coins. Behind him, the knight's visor never shifted, but Qyburn imagined eyes glinting azure beneath. The day named for departure to Harrenhal dawned cold and brilliant. Winterfell's bailey echoed with hammering hooves. Robb inspected last wagons, bricks of cheese packed in straw, kegs of northern ale, wagon-load of dragonglass javelins newly lacquered to resist shattering. He turned as footsteps approached. Jon Snow strode in black cloak, trimmed by Sansa's own stitching. A grey direwolf sewn beside the Night's Watch sigil, stark against the black. In his belt hung the Valyrian sword Longclaw, its pommel carved wolf's head proud. "You ride south, brother?" "Southeast first," Jon said, eyes narrowing as if measuring distance he would soon cover. "Eastwatch needs garrisons, but then yes, Harrenhal. The free folk seat cannot remain empty." "Mandalore." Robb slapped his shoulder. "Bring Tormund. Bring any who'll speak for the Frostfang tribes. They're Realm's folk now." Jon's mouth quirked. "Realm will learn that lesson slower than winter leaves. But we will teach." He looked at Grey Wind, nosing a cart of salt pork. "Strange to march without dead at our heels." "Strange," Robb agreed, though in truth the hush made him restless. Peace felt like stalking around a corner you knew hid another fight. They embraced, foreheads pressed. A silent vow that no crown, no council, no distance of leagues or law would sever what remained of House Stark. Then they parted, Jon for Black Horse and Eastern Road, Robb to lead the central host once more, direwolf banner snapping. Riverrun swelled like a fattening heart with each host that joined it. Manderly Cog sailed up the trident unloading silver-haired mermen who sang bawdy to the Tully daughters. Bronze-armored Vale Knights wound down from Maidenpool, escorted by Sansa. Dornish outriders glimmered in desert mail. In their vanguard strode Obara Sand wielding a spear longer than she was tall. Even the Ironborn came. 12 longships under Yara Greyjoy. Black sails patched but proud. Hulls heavy with sacks of grain, one from a new harvest on fertile islands the Reach had abandoned. "We learned fields feed longer than pillage," Yara declared, grinning as she slapped Robb's palm at the ford. "Times are odd when krakens plow." Across every campfire tongues tangled. Ironborn sea shanties colliding with northern shanties. Reachman courtiers flirting with spearwives. Children chasing each other between tents. Sometimes wore patchwork cloaks, sewn from borrowed cloth of half a dozen sigils. And each night, above the mingled smells of smoke and spice, 3 dragons patrolled. One shadow black, one glimmer green, one pale again, but no longer lame. They looped wide arcs, halting skirmishes before they sparked. Some cynics noted that few men felt brave beneath a watchful reptilian gaze. Others found comfort in the assurance that should treachery bloom, flame would cauterize quick. Yet, treachery favors darkness. On the eve of marching from River Run, an assassin slipped into Daenerys' pavilion. Only swift warning from Drogon, who shrieked outside like a cathedral bell, saved her life. The cutthroat, face tattooed with a chain of golden links, wielded a slender needle blade dipped in manticore venom. Barristan Selmy parried, though age slowed him. The blade nicked his wrist, barely a scratch, enough. By dawn he lay fever-rigid, while healers bled him with leeches. The cutthroat's corpse, scoured for secrets, yielded a scrap of parchment. Moonless noon. Lion breaks cage. Tyrion studied it, lips twisting. Manticore venom once found only in Qarth. Qburn's fingers reach far. Barristan's breath rattled. Daenerys sat vigil, Drogon coiled outside like living siege engine. When morning came, the old knight's eyes opened. "I have served 3 kings," he whispered. "The best upheld honor, the worst thought themselves taller than law. Make sure you are neither." She clasped his frail hand until warmth faded, then rose dry-eyed and gave instruction. His armor interred in Riverrun's crypt to honor House Tully's shelter, his ashes borne later to the Kingsguard's White Tower, when that tower stood again. 2 nights later, Stannis Guard stopped another infiltrator near his study. A boy scarcely older than Shireen, fingers blackened by wildfire residue. He confessed little before Melisandre's stare melted stubborn silence. Paid in silver by hooded man who smelled of leeches. Davos begged clemency. Stannis ordered the boy spared yet exiled to Night's Watch service, a mercy seasoned with grim example. Mistrust pooled. In war councils, Tyrion cautioned every lord to double watches. Margaery organized mixed patrols, so no single faction kept keys to powder rooms or armories. Even Sansa loaned Vale scouts to monitor food wagons. Thus girded, the army crossed the neck of the Trident Valley and entered the burnt lands surrounding Harrenhal. They moved like caravans spanning leagues, banners alternating bright and grim, supply wagons heavier than siege. By agreement, no catapult or ram accompanied them. Show of peace was paramount. But each wagon hid crossbows beneath canvas. Each knight wore chain under surcoat. Peace did not exclude caution. As they crested the ridge, Harrenhal revealed itself. 5 colossal towers, hunched like crippled giants around a still lake. Charred veins marred their skins where dragon flame had once run like lava. Ravens spired in flocks around cracked ramparts, croaking as though they had awaited fresh meat for a century. In the inner yard, a single banner flew since Stannis outriders had staked it days before. A circle of 8 linked swords welded tip to tip, empty center awaiting final forge. Beside it flapped the direwolf of Stark, the fiery heart-stag, the 3-headed dragon, the golden rose, the silver kraken, the red sun spear, and the sky-blue falcon. 7 guardians encircling a promise. The hosts encamped around the outer curtain walls and sectors, North and Vale by the King's Road Gate, Reach and Dornish across the southern lake, Ironborn moored on the western shore whose ruined docks still jutted like rib bones. Stannis commandeered the Widow's Tower, its blackened roof patched with fresh shingles. Daenerys claimed the Kingspire, least cracked, though its highest rooms swayed like a slow pendulum in stiff breeze. Tyrion found lodging in the old kitchens where huge hearths remained half intact. He set scribes there to draft the charter, smoke curling around their quills. The Assembly's Hall would be the hall of 100 hearths, once largest banqueting space in Westeros, now roofless. Carpenters raised raw pine beams across collapsed arches, draped canvas tarps dyed in midnight blue. They installed the 8 new seats, iron gleaming dark where swords melded smooth, each seat rimmed with hammered bronze symbols. A direwolf for the north, stag for stormlands, rose for reach, kraken for islands, falcon for Vale, sun and spear for Dorne, 3-headed dragon for crownlands, raven over mountain for the free folk. 8. Yet prophecy still murmured of 9. Melisandre circled the dais, fingertip tracing where a 9th might fit. She said nothing. Some watchers shivered. The first dawn after all banners assembled, horns summoned delegates. Rain pounded like fists on the canvas roof. Water sheeted down stone columns. Inside, torches guttered low, but smoke found cracks in tarp. The hall filled with wet leather and breath steam. Stannis entered first, armor black yet polished until it caught torch glow. Lightbringer across his back. He took the stag seat. Daenerys followed. Silver hair damp, cloak of shadow crimson falling like molten glass, dragon seat hers. Robb Stark limped to the direwolf seat, gray wind padding after to lie at Dae's foot. Margaery Tyrell glided to Rose seat. Yara Greyjoy slouched into kraken chair, boots splayed, grin lazily defiant. Lady Nymeria Sand, sent by Prince Doran, accepted Sunspear seat. Sansa Stark mounted steps to Falcon seat, representing the Vale after Lord Royce ceded vote to her for this session. And Tormund Giantsbane bounded up wearing surcoat, sewn with stitched raven and white mountain, slapping his chair's back so hard bronze rang. Silence claimed hall. Rain lessened, leaving dripping shush. Tyrion, record-keeper and temporary moderator, cleared throat. Let the first assembly of realms commence. They debated 3 days. First charter lines. Each realm sovereign within borders. Taxes levied by respective lords for local need. Yet a shared tithe, 1 grain in 20, 1 copper in 10, to common treasury for roads, healers, and watch upkeep. Second, standing armies no larger than 1 man per 100 souls, save Night's Watch and Royal Fleet, to be renamed Realm Fleet, regulated by quorum vote. Third, slavery outlawed in all territories, debt bondage limited to 1 year's labor, and marriages could not be forced without at least 2 signatory witnesses beyond kin. Caution gave way to argument. Ironborn balked at naval limits, Tyrells at tithes. Dornish lords demanded right of trial by combat remain. Stannis pushed for standardized tribunals. Sansa quietly steered dispute toward compromise, lending Vale neutrality. Robb's voice, hoarse from nights reciting case law with Maester Luwin's son, urged swift passage. The realm bleeds time. Daenerys backed him, reminding that famine stalked riverlands. When quills scratched final parchment near dusk of day 4, thunder rolled outside like drums of some approving god. Yet unsettled matters remained. Cersei's fate, restructure of King's Landing, and the 9th seat. On morning of 5th day, as they convened, a watchman's horn keened from gatehouse. Riders approaching North Road. Rain had ended. Low fog hugged reeds along the lake. Delegates filed onto rampart walks. Up King's Road came black horses pulling a bier draped in direwolf banner. Behind rode Jon Snow flanked by men in patched black cloaks. Among them, tall figures swathed in tattered brown. Bran Stark perched upon Hodor's massive shoulders, white eyes wide, pupils cloudy as new milk. Ghost loped ahead, red eyes fixed on gray wind waiting at gate. Wind and snowpelt touched noses. A hush rippled crowd. Robb met them in muddy courtyard. He hugged Bran, tears mixing with grime. Bran spoke softly. "This castle remembers dragons." His hand brushed stone, moss curled alive under fingertips, then stilled. Jon dismounted before dais inside hall moments later, Raven Mountain seat reserved. He laid across table Catelyn's copy of charter, she'd annotated with careful margin notes. "The free folk seat stands ready to speak," he said. But before he sat, Bran raised his voice, eerily ringing despite youth. "A 9th seat must stand, for roots deeper than men's banners." He pointed toward Howell's broken courtyard, where an oak sapling grew through cracked flagstones, leaves glimmering dew on a dew. No one had noticed it day before. The land itself, its voice through the green's ears who remain. Without it, circle incomplete. Stannis' brow furrowed. Melisandre's ruby pulsed. Some scoffed. Others shivered, recalling children of forest tales. Yet Daenerys looked at Bran, eyeless gaze no longer a boy's, but something vaster. She nodded once. Let it be so. The land bled for men's quarrels. Let it speak at council. Tyrion recorded. Tormund guffawed. A tree gets a chair. Why not? Trees have deeper wisdom than krakens. Carpenters shaped branch and root into 9th seat by next dusk, curved like living bough, set between wolf and raven chairs. Bran sat, Hodor behind, roots seemingly drank torchlight. That night, final matter. Cersei. She had been brought under heavy guard from her tower to cell below. Tyrion proposed exile to Essos in guarded galley. Stannis demanded life imprisonment. Dorne argued for trial by combat, Nymeria itching to wield spear. Sansa, surprisingly, urged clemency. Bury her name, deny her legends, let her live and watch a realm thrive beyond her shadow. Debate churned till moonset. Dawn bled rose over tarps as vote taken. 5 for exile, 3 for dungeon, 1 abstained, Bran. Cersei would sail east under black sails. No title, no inheritance. If she returned, death. In the courtyard, she emerged pale, but eyes blazing. Tyrion escorted her, silent. Yara's longship crew shackled her to mast. Qyburn nowhere found. Silent Night also vanished. Their escape timed with moonless noon 2 nights earlier when sudden eclipse blotted sun at midday, leaving city of Lannisport panicked. Ships pursued but lost track in haze. Rumor whispered of a vessel slipping west, carrying caged beast in coffin armor. Cersei saw dragons roosting on Harrenhal's southern parapet. She laughed once, dark, ringed in irony. "Enjoy your wheel." She called upward to banners. It always turns back. No one answered. The ship cast off. Sea swallowed words. 6 days of revel after charter signed. Markets sprung among camps. Dornish dates beside northern smoked fish. Quarthian silk vendors trailed Daenerys' retinue. Poets recited ballads of Whitefire Gorge. Children strung garlands across dragon statues carved from charred rubble. On final feast night, they gathered in Hall of 100 Hearths under clear sky. Tarps rolled back, revealing stars. Tables formed great circle, mirroring seats. Stannis toasted fallen. For those whose bones fill this mortar. Daenerys toasted living. For those who will mend it. Robb offered northern ale. Yara poured peach brandy over floor. One sip to drown old grudges. Bran remained aloof, eyes reflecting constellations. Sansa rose. She carried bundle. Patchwork cloak sewn of fabric, gifted from every realm. Rose velvet, kraken black wool, Dornish orange silk, sky blue Aran linen, grey wolf fur, Baratheon black. She laid cloak across central stone where melted swords once twisted. Let bloodstains yield to cloth. She said, may next generation remember not steel but thread. Cheers rose. Tambours beat. Dragons overhead breathed gentle flame lines, illuminating hall and rippling amber waves. The wheel had turned. Outside rains returned, gentler. They rinsed Harrenhal's scorched stones, filling lake until reflection showed towers less twisted, more like spires striving again toward sky. In the mirror calm, 8 banners and a sapling seat shimmered. In distant pike, Yara's steward read charter aloud to Ironborn captains. They grumbled, but began counting men for fields. In Sunspear, Prince Doran signed parchment pledging Dromons to New Realm fleet. In Old Town, archmaesters argued which scraps of Valyrian scrolls to send to Night's Watch smiths for forging dragonglass steel. At Eastwatch, children of free folk and watch raced across repair planks, nipping at first sea-pink blossoms sprouting in cracks. And in King's Landing, a city without a throne, carpenters tore down scorched ruins of Red Keep's audience hall, clearing ground for plaza of learning, schools to rise where swords once pointed. Not all wounds vanished, pockets of lion-loyal Sellsword skulked alleys. Winter's memory lingered in famine belts, beyond the summer sea new storms brewed, slavers fallen plotting return, Carthian warlocks whispering of dragons chained. But a framework now bound realms in circle, rather than line of conquest. It could bend, perhaps it would break. Its success hung on hearts that beat still, and on one heart forged in root and flame. Melisandre visited Bran before dawn on last morning at Harrenhal. They met in courtyard, where sapling oak drank moonlight. She bowed. The Lord's fire dims for now, but long night may rise anew when men forget. Bran's eyes glowed pale green within whiteness. Then remind them, he said. She placed her ruby at tree's base. Leaves rustled though wind slept. When she left, dawn bloomed watchful. They parted. Tyrell south, Dornish farther, Ironborn into western swells, Vale knights up mountain passes, Northmen escorted Greenseer, Stannis riding crownlands with Daenerys and dragons, guarding caravan of masons who would rebuild King's Landing as city of circles. Each district walled and ringed so every craft and creed housed within turn. History would argue which step mattered more, the circle of seats or oath that none would rule from sword throne again. Sons of New Age would test both soon enough. But in that shining cusp between storms, mothers sang to infants of wolves and stags that bound swords into chairs, of dragons that melted night, of trees that spoke for earth. They called it the Quiet Grace, though books later named simply the Turning. And somewhere beyond sunrise, in a cabin lit by ocean glimmers, Queen without crown studied charred deck and told herself wheels break, only to find under her fingernails splinters from axle. Too stubborn yet to let the future roll. For realms now, however, wheels spun on fresh grease of hope. Roads lengthened into possibility. From field to forge to palace, men and women looked to Harrenhal and pictured not ruin but a ring, each link as bright as their own reflection in newborn puddles of spring rain. Ka, Endine. Dusk shimmered like soft-spun copper upon the summer sea, the horizon a single glowing seam where water breathed into sky. A lean galley, hull lacquer black and nameless, save for a faint sigil of 3 scorpions etched beneath the prow. Sliced through the swell, under silent oar. Aboard, the rowers labored without drum, without chant, timing strokes to the hiss of the sea against wood, their bare backs striped by lash marks fresh enough to gleam whenever the light caught salt-crusted sweat. The lash belonged to no boatswain. It belonged to a king who could not die, a king who never spoke. He stood aft. Skull-helmed, visor fixed on the west, toward a homeland that had exiled him twice and dared call itself reborn. Cersei Lannister watched him from the stern castle, wind whipping dull strands of gold across her hollow cheeks. Chains anchored her wrists to an iron stanchion, slack enough only to pace 3 steps starboard, 3 steps port, like a caged lioness too weary to rage. Prison dress of plain wool scratched old bruises, yet her gaze retained that green, assessing brilliance, the fire that refused to gutter even after pride and power had been pared away by verdict. She had vowed not to speak to Qyburn after their escape from Harrenhal. 5 days into voyage he broke the vow. How far to Volantis? Qyburn looked up from his ledger, quill suspended. He marked each heartbeat of the oars, transposed it into spidery notation no one else could read, then smiled faintly. 2 weeks with calm seas, my queen. Less if the moon favors us. Ben Sao. Do not call me queen. Her voice was hoarse, a rasp of salt and thirst. They unmade me. He dipped quill again. Titles are wind. You wear sovereignty in the marrow, not on the brow. The city of elephants will kneel when you arrive with proof that dragons can be killed. Her chin lifted at that. On deck below, a tarpaulin covered something massive and still. If one had stood close, one might have heard a groan, a hint of trapped air escaping scales torn by razor hooks. She remembered the moment under Harrenhal's cliffs, a net of barbed chain flung forth by the silent night, invisible against dark water, until it dragged the least of Daenerys' brood beneath. A desperate ploy, but wounded Viserion had not yet fully healed. Most believed he climbed too low in pursuit of swift gulls. Only Qyburn, shadowing rivers at night, had lain in wait with barbs forged from salvaged scorpion bolts. Binding spells inked on leather thrummed along each link, works of warlocks who despised Targaryen flame. They had snatched the dragon like fishermen hauling a silver whale. Even muzzled, the beast radiated heat. Rowers sweated, lantern oil thickened to tar. Cersei sat nights listening to its pulse reverberate through oak, matching her own rage-born throb. It made no sense that she should feel kinship with a creature wrought to burn her children's realm, but in the world that existed beyond loss, logic bent. Viserion was a weapon, a child of ruin. She too. She glared at Qyburn. The oarsman. Fear breeds talk. We cannot hide what we carry. The galley will change name and crew at Lys. Sailors are as loyal as their purses. His smile curved. No one else must know until the beast roars atop Volantis's black wall. Then the world learns Cersei Lannister did not fade. She evolved. The silent night pivoted, visor glinting. Cersei thought of Gregor Clegane before his monstrous resurrection and shivered, but not from fear. She remembered other faces. Joffrey purple and gasping, Myrcella bleeding innocence into Dornish sand, Tommen a shriveled silhouette drifting down from Tower Edge. Those pictures lived behind her lids. When she opened them again, vengeance tasted like iron coins on her tongue. Let us speak of the moonless noon, she said. Qyburn closed the ledger. An eclipse will cross the summer sea within 3 fortnights. Scholars at the Freehold charted it. The sky will darken at high sun, a miracle ripe for portents. The city will gather on the bridge of Volantis to gape at omens. That is when you appear astride new dragon. Golden banners unfurled, Faith in the assembly will fracture before it has set root. Daenerys will come. Cersei recalled the girl's eyes when the verdict was read. Icy mercy and quiet steel mingled. She will not leave one of her children betrayed. Yes, Qyburn agreed. She will come, and we will greet her with every chain, every scorpion, every trick Essosi slavers learned when Balerian's grand cult scorched their domes. Dragons can devour whole armies, but starving dogs tear lion apart once the meat begins to smell. Cersei touched the chain about her wrist. Unlock this. He hesitated. The crew fear me more than them. Her whisper carved cold. He produced a key. When iron cuff fell, she flexed numb fingers, felt spark of dignity surge. She stepped to rail, hair whipping. West, across endless water, the realm she once ruled built city of circles, planted flowers upon ashes, sang hymns to wolves and dragons alike. Let them build. Fire finds timber. One dragon lost would breed tenfold fury in Daenerys. Fury eroded alliances, and fury, Cersei knew, could make any promise break like rotten rope. Behind her, the silent knight knelt beside the tarpaulin, gauntlets caressing a scale the size of a stool seat. No emotion in his masked face, but she sensed devotion. Qyburn's masterpiece worshipped only those who fed it purpose. Cersei squared shoulders. Tell the captain we row through night. Dragons do not require sleep. While the Scorpion galley skulked eastward, King's Landing inhaled renewal. Mason hammers rang sunrise to starfall. The Red Keep's gutted shell surrendered to scaffolds. Workers chipped away melted battlements, shaping them into cobble for new squares. In place of throne rooms, smoking ruin rose a broad amphitheater, open to sea breeze, tiers of stone benches encircling a central dais. Marble cutters etched low walls with scenes of harvest, mountain ranges, wind-tossed ships, stories of peace, not conquest. Children of Flea Bottom swarmed the site daily. Some carried bricks. Some sold roasted chickpeas. Some simply stared, astounded to see day laborers paid without lash. Among them wandered a gaunt girl named Lily, eyes green as sea glass. She remembered a time when soldiers had kicked her mother for sleeping too near Maegor's holdfast. Now she balanced water jugs for stonecutters who called her Little Lady and pressed copper stars into her palm. On breaks, she perched on ruined step, peering at a scrap of charcoal drawing. Sansa Stark wearing patchwork cloak, distributing loaves. Lily had never seen a highborn lady who smiled so shyly. She tucked drawing in her shift, dream blossoming like shy bud. Yet not all felt wonder. Beyond city walls, an enclave of knights, formerly sworn to Casterly Rock, drilled under new crimson banner. A roaring lion pierced by arrow yet standing. Sir Arwood Strickland, Aunts of the Golden Company, twice exiled, commanded them. Word from Essos had reached him. The Lion Queen sailed. His company would meet her at Stepstones. He sharpened spearheads, telling brothers that wolves and dragons now split realm spoils, but lions still hunted best at dusk. In cellars beneath River Gate, men in green leather brewed casks of wildfire from leftover stock Tyrion once hid. Their master, masked, a chain tattooed down one cheek, tested viscosity with glass rod. He recited formulae older than Aegon's Landing. When eclipse darkness fell, barrels would line Valyrian docks. Chaos loved two fronts. Northward, Jon Snow reached Eastwatch to find the tide higher than any spring in memory. The rebuilt gate timbers groaned as waves battered ice buttresses. Gulls wheeled. Spray chilled men's brows to crystals. Castle yards bustled with new timber frames. Houses for free folk families trading spears for nets. Tormund strode among them offering bellowed critiques. Nail your roof tighter or snow rats'll shit on your stew. Children giggled, imitating him. Jon convened council in storehouse where maps covered salted cod barrels. Val, princess of free folk by courtesy, sat cross-legged upon crate, silver blonde hair braided with raven feathers. She pointed to a black blot near Shadow Tower. Caves collapse. Ice giants? No, rumbled different, as if hollow ground empties. Ranger Bannon nodded. Sound travel strange. Late nights we hear rattling, like chains dragged across vaulted hall. John traced path. We'll send listeners with horn of dragonglass tips. If tunnels beneath wall still open, we flood with fire oil. He had brought 20 barrels tallow mixed with pitch and crushed resin, gift from Yara's krakens. When council ended, Val lingered. You march again come summer. John sighed. Realm's circle needs free folk voice. Then, I ride. She slapped chest. Teach pigs in south not to stare when a woman wears knife. She glanced toward horizon. But tread lightly. You fought dead once. Some still wander beyond Skirling Pass. Husks drifting, without night king raising them, they crumble slow, but they hunt warmth. He accepted whispered dread. Even victory had left embers smoldering beneath ice. At Harrenhal, the sapling oak stretched tendrils each dawn. Leaves wider, greener. Bran sat beneath, eyes clouded. Ravens flocked to his shoulders. Hodor lingered near new root seat even after hosts withdrew. Caretakers brought buckets of lake water to nourish tree. Some nights Bran's soft chanting echoed. Old tongue mixing with children's speech, naming lost groves, coaxing seeds hidden beneath scorched flagstone to stir. Shoots of fern sprouted along cracks, pale mushrooms ringed dais perimeter. Reminders that the ninth seat, silent yet potent, watched. Melisandre remained 3 days after councils parted. One twilight she approached sapling. We burn wooden idols, yet you plant them in palaces. Dotched to coal. Bran's gaze lifted, pupils like distant stars. Flame kills infection. Roots heal soil. Both needed. Your circle great, she murmured. But circles close. When birth becomes death, will roots still hold? Ask the tree, he whispered. Voice nothing of boy. Bark wind creaked. Ruby at her throat dimmed, then flared again. She left that night, following ghost of vision west. Some said red shadows flitted along shore for weeks after. Others claimed a woman in scarlet walked with warlocks in lees, seeking glass candles no fire could melt. Summer crept. Grain waved in fields once mutilated by siege. Bees reddened clover. In riverlands, blacksmiths hammered first coins minted with assembly seal. Obverse 8 sword ring, reverse wheat sheaf encircled by sunburst. They called the currency circles. Merchants chuckled at pun. But soon circles passed hand to hand from Dorne's wine stores to White Harbor's cod markets. Thread stitching realm. Marguerite Tyrell toured villages around Highgarden gifting cuttings of sweet corn, bread to sprout twice per season, promising sharecrop contracts at fair weight. She traveled with Sir Brienne, Lord Commander of Dawnguard, sworn to defend roads from lingering sellsword bands. Brienne's blue cloak now bore stag and rose entwined. She still woke nights seeing Bolton's bastards, yet dawn found her spear steady. Peace, she learned, required as much blade as battle. In the Crownlands, Stannis oversaw dredging of Blackwater Rush, clearing wildfire sediment. He avoided city celebrations, preferring ledger halls where scribes tabulated tithe. Lightbringer he hung above new council chamber entrance, not as threat, but as reminder. Shireen convinced him to found Scrawlhouse teaching letters to orphaned war children. She penned primer of realm symbols. Direwolf means north, rose means food, dragon means sky. One humid evening as sunset bled lavender across copper roofs, a raven from Volantis clawed into the rookery. Its message bore seal of a 3-headed dragon pierced by lion's fang, unknown crest. The parchment smelled of brine and strange incense. Ink red. Moonless noon approaches. A lion with wings hunts your young. Fire fades in chains, if sky ignores shadow. The rookery master rushed to hand of the king, Tyrion Lannister. He unrolled message, jaw clenching. Not cryptic to him. He ran to Harbor Tower where Daenerys kept vigils. Rain had begun again, warm but urgent. He found her on balcony, Drogon perched on spire above as if carved. Tyrion passed scroll. She read once, knuckles blanching. Viserion. Eclipse is rare but charted. An event expected near Volantis. Qyburn may stage spectacle. We sail tonight, she said. Stannis convened crisis council. Arguments flew. Recall fleets, dispatch scouts, protect city of circles first. But dragons, not negotiable. Robb volunteered Northmen for escort. Yara swore Kraken sails swift. Margaery insisted grain fleet could pivot for supplies. Within hours, 12 war galleys readied. Realm fleets first muster. Sailors painted fresh crest. Circle of swords over foaming wave. Dragons circled overhead, anxious growls rumbling thunder. Shireen surprised council by proposing decoy banners. Dress one galley in Targaryen sails, sail east to draw fire. Stannis' proud look warmed chamber. Plan approved. At dawn, flotilla departed Blackwater Bay. Seabirds shrieking. Crowds gathered on New Stone Quay, waving patchwork flags, hearts ragged between fear and pride. Children clutched wooden dragon toys craftsmen had started carving, uncertain if they cheered for beasts or the ones who rode them. Volantis baked beneath sun. 7 days later, markets thrummed. Red priests preached unity under Aralor using tale of Whitefire Gorge. Yet whispers threaded alleys. A foreign queen, lost lioness, rides captive worm. Eclipse will crown her. Black wall overshadowed docks, where slavers still traded quietly, despite Meereen decrees. On one pier, a masked scholar lit incense of shadow binds, chanting as crewmen hauled massive caged beast from hidden hold of scorpion galley. Viserion scales dulled from brine. Irons bit flesh, runes etched in Valyrian glyphs glowed sickly. At child's first screech, slaves nearby collapsed, noses bleeding from pressure wave. Cersei watched from balcony of abandoned elephant merchant house. She donned armor of gilded scales, lion's head clasp at throat. Qyburn fastened a mantle of scarlet silk across her shoulders. The city sees omens in blood, he whispered. Let us give them red enough to drown prophecy of circles. Above, sun climbed. 2 high priests debated on temple step whether crimson sky predicted a new Azer. Tugged by curiosity, throngs filled long bridge, merchants closing stalls. Cersei breathed jasmine-heavy air, tasting moment. Then horizon darkened, not by moon, but by 3 shapes surging across blue. Drogon, regal and wounded, but defiant. Viserion unbound, having torn half-cage away en route. Realm fleet's trick had worked. Decoy ships sailed into bay flying crimson dragon. Scorpion arrows loosed, but real dragons dove under hull, smashing chains with claws fueled by mother's cry. Now Daenerys rode Drogon, hair streaming silver, armor of white scale shimmering. At her flank Jon near straddled Rhaegal, though not rider by bond, only by desperation. Behind, Yara's swift longship skimmed, archers ready. Cersei's moment of triumph shriveled to bitter gall. She whirled. Release the scorpions. But Qyburn's warlocks hesitated, panicked by arcane brand on Viserion's broken collar now flaring gold. Spell unraveled when prisoner tasted free sky. Runes flickered, chains sagged molten. The dragon roared. Sound shook columns. In roar Cersei heard mirthless laughter of fate. Even then she might have rallied. She reached for wildfire lever concealed in balcony rail. In her mind green flame gushed, dragons shrieked. But a crossbow bolt pierced her gauntlet, nailing hand to beam. Across street stood Lily, the flea-bottom girl, traveled north on grain cart seeking Lady of Cloak. She held a borrowed reach longbow, eyes wide with fury born of mothers kicked in alley. Cersei screamed, another bolt thunked, pinning shoulder. Silent night lunged to shield her, but Drogon's shadow fell. Flame as white as Harrenhal's ghosts crashed upon roof. Stone bubbled. Balcony exploded in steam and shards. When smoke cleared, Lion Queen was gone. Bones fused with obsidian glass drooling along wall face. Silent night stumbled burning, toppled into canal hiss. Below, Qyburn crawled. Robe aflame. He reached for broken collar, half buried in rubble, but taloned foot descended, crushing ribcage. Viserion shrieked victory. Sun disappeared behind moon just then. World dimmed to twilight. River lanterns bloomed. In eerie hush, Daenerys guided Drogon to hover above Long Bridge. "Hear me, Volantis." Her voice rolling thunder. "Dragons war no more upon the living. Slavery ends. Free men choose circle or answer to flame." She raised fist. Viserion and Rhaegal roared, echoing across Delta. Chains rained like iron hail into water. In shadows, merchants flung off gold masks, cheered with slaves. Some slavers slunk away. Red priests fell to knees, proclaiming Lightbringer's alliance with Dragonflame. All eyes witnessed Moon's disk slide aside. Sun remerging, light after living night. Across summer sea, ravens carried news faster than wind. Lion Queen burned, captive dragon reclaimed, assembly circle proven steel. In King's Landing amphitheater under scaffolds, Sansa read dispatch, tears of relief wetting cloak. Dot and cloak. Robb, at White Harbor negotiating fish tariff, laughed loud enough to startle gulls. Stannis allowed himself brittle smile. Lily returned a heroine. Lady of Arrows they called her. Years later bards would sing of Lion's eclipse, last gasp of old blood feud. They would hail quiet Gracie's dawn truly breaking that day. They would credit Circle Coin for trade blossoming, Green's Ear seat for forests replanted, Dragonflight for 5 successive summers without war. But on that night, after fires dimmed and Volantis freed, poor began cautious song. Daenerys walked docks alone. Jon joined. Cylin both. They watched Viserion sleeping curled around shattered scorpion bolts. Steam pluming gentle. Finally Jon spoke. "Peace is fragile as ice on pond." She nodded. "Then we skate light, mend cracks before they spread." He glanced north instinctively, where wall stood faint line between stars. Winter returns. Cycles turn. But perhaps circle holds because each helps bear weight. Their hands brushed. No vows spoken. Under dragon's breath, they breathed promise enough. High above, full moon shone immaculate, indifferent yet witness. Waves lapped hulls bearing new banners. Swordring encircling wheat. Stitched by a girl who once thought highborn unreachable. Circles rippled across water, widening, touching shores yet unseen.